up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 476. My name is Marshall, one of your Limited Resources, and joining me, well, not on the line, but actually sitting directly across from me here in my place in Seattle, it is Ryan Spain. Ryan, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
Yeah, so Ryan, you are here because Luis and I were going to record Monday. Mm-hmm. His voice went out. Then Tuesday, his voice wasn't back. And Wednesday, his voice wasn't quite back either. We didn't want to push it and have it go out halfway through the show because this is a pretty long episode. So today we were going to record, and he's like, I'm good to go. And then right when he was about to get off work, he came down with a fever, and his throat said it felt like it was on fire. So poor Luis has had a very, very rough week, and he's super bummed that he doesn't get to do the Rare show. It's one of his favorites. It's one of my favorites, but it is to your benefit, my friend, because now you get to come over and we get to talk rares.
Sorry, Luis,
and
get better.
Yeah, get well soon, Luis. But for now, it's me and Ryan going old school. We're doing set reviews from the two of us who started them way back in the day. And we're going to be doing every single rare and mythic rare in Ravnica Allegiance. So before we get into that, let's get into all the normal stuff. First things first, this show is brought to you by our sponsor, channelfireball.com. Thanks so much for our sponsor. And if you want to get anything Ravnica Allegiance related, that's the place to go. You can find booster boxes, booster packs, anything that you may need magic related, you're going to find it over at CFB. Also, you can get awesome free content on the front page of the site. You can also support the show directly. Thank you so much for our new patrons who we picked up from the set review last time. Really appreciate it, everybody. Welcome aboard. Patreon.com/limited resources is the place to go to sign up if you want to support the show directly. Okay, we're going to get right into business here. First, I'm going to go over the grading scale overview. And this is, of course, well, Ryan, this is actually your first time giving grades, which is kind of funny.
Grades were a Laux introduction. I pushed against them because cards are so contextual, especially early when you're trying to figure out a format. But they are an interesting anchor point to get the hosts on the same page and help the audience hear where the hosts are at.
Yeah, on a much bigger picture. So, first things first, A's. These are going to be your bombs, your game winners. They're going to be good in many situations, not just ones where you're ahead, but especially when you're behind. They're the best cards in the set. Sometimes hyper-efficient removal spells make it into this as well. Cards that are B's are cards that actively pull you towards their colors. Now, this means they can be headliners for a set, go-to cards, or reasons to be in a color, clan, or guild. Most solid removal usually falls into the B camp as well. C's are your playables. These are the pawns of limited. They're fairly interchangeable, and you need some amount of them for your deck. But, they're really important. They fill out a very important role in limited, since most of the time the deck is made primarily of some cards around the C range. Mediocre removal often fits here as well as many combat tricks. D's are your sometimes playables. These are the ones that you can play, but you'd prefer not to run them. If, all else being equal, you'd say, I'd rather not have that card in my deck. They're mediocre to junky cards. Maybe they're situational. Maybe they have a high setup cost. Maybe they make the cut, but you're just not thrilled with it. And then also kind of bad removal usually goes here as well. F's are your unplayables. They're unplayable in virtually all scenarios. They're incredibly narrow cards that can fit here as well. Or cards with absurd mana costs. If it costs 15 mana, it's going to be an F, not because of power level, but because you never cast it. We have two other categories that we put cards into. Sideboard. These are cards that rarely, if ever, make the main deck, but can be very powerful out of your sideboard. We have a separate grade for these, since they're usually like an A or a B in the right situation, or they're like an F in the wrong situation. So keep an eye out for those, although usually the Rare show doesn't bring us too many sideboard cards. And the last one is Build Around. These are cards that are typically not good enough on their own. You don't just put them in your deck. But if you properly build around them, they can be all-stars. And the Rares will often actually bring us some number of those too. So I'm going to do this kind of old school. We're just going to start with white, work our way through. We're going to end up in a big patch of gold at the end. And let's get right into it. Our first card, Ryan, is called Angel of Grace. It's 3 white for a 5/4 angel at Mythic Rare. It's got flash and flying. So sold.
Already B plus A minus, maybe A minus. Is that just an A minus?
Probably so, because it's the 2-for-1 potential.
Yeah,
blocking something. Although blocking with this is a little scary, but it has more text, which is kind of insane. When it enters the battlefield, until end of turn, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 reduces it to 1 instead. I've actually played with this card multiple times now, and that text is weird and doesn't... It does something, but it's not super relevant.
And you don't really get to choose if it happens. It's like, oh, look, it worked out where I'm going to save some damage. Like, it could be, you accept leaf. It's hard to use.
It is.
Effectively. It's just a random thing that might come up.
The best case scenario is you're racing, and your opponent goes, attack you for 25 damage or whatever, and you go, Angel of Grace, take it all. I go to 1, slap back, kill you.
Yeah.
That's your primary plan. Now, it also has an activated ability. Hey, it's a mythic rare, right? 4 white, exile it from your graveyard. Your life total becomes 10, which is another kind of finicky ability. But hey, whatever, right? We got a 5 mana.
Extra.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a lot of gravy on a 5/4 flash flyer for 5 mana. So
it's not like tasty gravy, though, to me, though. I don't think it really moves the grade at all, really. For me, past flash flying 5/4 for 5, that's really what I'm rating here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably give it an A. Like, it's already close. It's B plus range, A minus. Maybe it's an A minus. I'll go A minus. That's what
I have it at A minus. It's very good, but it's basically a notch above Sarah Angel, which is kind of your B plus range card. B plus. B at this point. Yeah, it was probably B plus back in my day, but it's kind of fallen to B.
It has. All right, so Angel of Grace gets an A minus. Still very solid. Next is another card that is not a build around, but if you do build around it, it really rewards you. It's called Hero of Precinct 1. It's 1 and a white for a 2/2 human warrior at rare. And it says, whenever you cast a multicolored spell, you get a 1/1 human token. Well, talk about a bear with upside.
Yeah, how do we feel about bears right now? I mean, I think they're fine. They're pretty weak in the set overall, I think.
They kind of are.
So I get kind of hungry for 2-drops that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
And this gets me a little bit excited. It's not amazing, but it's a nice 2, and you're going to incidentally get some humans out of it, probably in most decks in this format.
Basically every deck.
How do you not play 8 plus multicolored, gold cards in this format?
Totally. And if you lean your deck even slightly in that direction, you can actually kind of go off. Like, this card actually is capable of dumping a lot of 1/1 tokens. And at the low cost of a card, you would be a D otherwise, like 1 and a white for a 2/2.
I've had it played against me a couple of times, and it's been a pest.
I agree. I think so too. And it's any spell, by the way. It's not just creatures. Keep that in mind. So Hero of Precinct 1 for me is minimum a B. It might even be a B plus.
I was going to say B minus because it still is just a 2/2 and it makes stuff on the ground.
It doesn't make 1/1 flyers.
That's a pretty clogged area.
Yeah, I would say B. I would go B on Hero of Precinct 1. Do you want to stick with B minus?
I'm going to stick with B minus just because I think I think a decent bear in this format is a good CC plus, and this improves on it quite a bit. You may be right. We'll see.
Okay,
it's close.
B-ish. Next is Lumbering Battlement. This is 4 and a white for a 4/5 beast at rare. It's got vigilance. So let's do the Ryan classic.
Yeah, the vanilla test works nicely here.
Yeah, 4/5 vigilance for 5 in.
Yeah.
When it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-token creatures you control until it leaves the battlefield. So you're kind of, I don't want to say Oblivion Ring because it's a different effect, but the new template of Oblivion Ring and everything, you're banishing, lighting a bunch of your own stuff that are not tokens. For each card you exile this way, it gets +2/+2. And then if they ever kill the battlement, you get all of those things back.
Now, I saw this and thought that, like the Angel of Grace, that was going to be irrelevant text to me. And I ended up playing it and finding it was not the case in certain matchups. You have to be very careful about using an ability like that against removal that leaves the 4/5, leaves the Lumbering Battlement on the battlefield.
So painful.
Because then you're just in deep trouble. But sometimes you have a Hero of Precinct 1, maybe that's too good, but like some other bear that has kind of lost its effectiveness or whatever. And geez, turning that 4/5 into a 6/7 vigilance.
Yes.
Like if you are in so I've gotten into some battles on the ground where it was very effective to go ahead and snap up some of my creatures because they were playing like black-red.
Yeah.
So
what are they going to do?
If you're going to kill this thing, I'm getting everything back. And in the meantime, you're trying to beat me on the ground with a handful of creatures. I'm going to make, I actually took 2 creatures out and made it an 8/9.
An 8/9, yeah.
And it won.
Yeah.
It won the game.
Yeah, and I've had that same experience. In fact, I even took it one step further. I played it on a board where I had a Chillbringer and the 2/1 for 1 and a blue that scries 2 when it enters the battlefield. And I set up a situation where I attacked with the Lumbering Battlement with those 2 cards under it, knowing that my opponent was compelled to trade for the Lumbering Battlement for their huge creature on the ground, a Scuttlegator or something like that, I can't remember. And I'm like, cool, and I get my 2 things back, I scry 2, I tap down another one of your things, and I made my cards relevant again off of a trade. So I like Lumbering Battlement a lot. 5 mana is kind of whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a Dowser of Lights, and it's format dependent. I wasn't expecting to like Dowser last format, and then I did. So we have to see where this slots in, especially given the ground beef we see in this format. That's much bigger than last. But I think the its upside, where I thought it was not going to be relevant, and it is relevant. You just have to be super careful.
Yeah.
And I think I like it at like a B- because of that.
Yeah, I like it at B. I like Lumbering Battlement. I think it's really good, super solid. And also, let's not forget, if your opponent has used removal that leaves your cards on the battlefield, you get to take advantage of that, right? If they've got the other stuff, yeah. Next is Smothering Tithe. Smothering Tithe is a 3 and a white for an enchantment. It's rare. It says whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sack this artifact, add 1 mana of any color. This seems awful.
Yeah, it seems like a stretch. I don't care. I have your treasure. Like you're paying 4 mana to slowly ramp.
No,
from there.
This looks
out.
Awful.
F. Don't play this.
Yeah, F for Smothering Tithe. Bye. Tithe Taker's better. It's 1 and a white for a 2/1 human soldier at rare. It's really annoying. So the first thing is it's a 2/1 with Afterlife 1. Okay.
Yeah.
So it dies, you get a 1/1
nice baseline.
Good. Yeah. Next though, it says during your turn, spells your opponents cast cost 1 more to cast, and abilities your opponents activate cost 1 more to activate unless they're mana abilities. This is actually surprisingly more annoying than I thought it would be. That doesn't look super relevant. Like, you can play around that pretty easily.
Yeah.
But the ability to shut off a lot of your opponent's expensive instants is actually a thing. It just makes it awkward, right? Like, a lot of time you want to use your guild mage, right, on their turn, and it's like, okay, I have to pay an extra 1 to tap down your guy or whatever. The main thing though with Tithe Taker is pretty straightforward. It's a 2/1 with Afterlife with upside, and that's totally fine. It's probably like a C+ or a B-.
Yeah, this is another place where the tax on mana is less important to me than everything else on the card, and everything else on the card is a C+.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of actually where I end up on it. I just don't think the taxing is quite good enough to bring it into the B range. Maybe if it was all the time, like if that was just constantly on, that would be probably too good. But
yeah. Okay, so C+ for Tithe Taker. Last white card is Unbreakable Formation. It's 2 and a white for an instant. It's rare. It says creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Ugh. But addendum, if you cast a spell during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain vigilance until end of turn. Whoa! That's way better.
That is way better, and that's kind of bearing the lead there with the addendum, because...
Seriously, you ever cast... I mean, the only time you cast this outside of that is... in limited, at least, is if you're in one of those rare positions where your opponent has a sweeper.
Yeah, it's a kind of a constructed card, I think, more, but I think it's an interesting design. I like modal designs like this where it does 2 very different things in the 2 modes, even though it's just a little bump to effectively the same rules text. But just at instant speed, this is acting like you said, a prevention counter target wrath effect, right? And then on your own turn, it can be. Here have a crusade effect or a lord type effect. It's really interesting to successfully put those on the same card, those 2 modes. And the lord effect is extra good. I mean, those are counters, and you're indestructible until end of turn. And that's why I counted it. I would just call it a pump effect if they weren't permanent. The fact that they're counters.
This is Song of Freyalise.
Yeah.
Except for, did that give trample? Yeah, this doesn't. But still, you're just like, play this on your main phase, attack with everything.
Yeah, you just don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, no, right? Math is for blockers. So, and then there are situations, although they come up less often than players generally think, where you're being attacked by a bunch of creatures and there's like this mass combat, right? The truth of the matter is that Magic doesn't incentivize mass combat on that level. right? The defensive player has such an advantage because of how blocking works that most of the time that situation rarely comes up where it's like attack with all my stuff. Okay, I block with all these things. Like that just doesn't come up as often as people think. But when it does, Unbreakable Formation lets you win that combat pretty nicely too, even without the counters.
Yeah, it creates that opportunity.
Yeah. So I like Unbreakable Formation. I mean, look, I'd want to play it in ideally an Orzhov deck with a whole bunch of creatures. Wait till they all trade off, become little flyers, and then addendum it and attack with everything. That seems really good to me. So I think it's actually very strong if you build in those type of builds. And I would give it like a B-. Like I'm not super high on it.
Yeah, I was going to go even higher. I think it's like a B.
Okay.
It does have setup costs though. Like the thing with real anthems, like something like Glorious Anthem, an enchantment that sits there and gives all of your creatures +1/+1. You can draw your creatures after and have that effect still affect them.
Yep.
So it's not as good as a true anthem in that effect, but this has this alternate mode, right?
Yeah.
So if you really just wanted the anthem for limited, you'd probably just prefer a straight up Glorious Anthem for that reliability. But this has some neat modes, and I'm willing to go B on it.
Okay, so B or B- for Unbreakable Formation, which brings us to blue. And our first card is interesting because it's not really like a super powerful rare, but it's pretty good. It's called Benthic Biomancer. It's blue for a 1/1. It's a Merfolk Wizard Mutant. I wonder what clan it's part of, or what guild, I mean. It's rare. It says, whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put onto Benthic Biomancer, draw a card, then discard a card. So good old loot. And hey, it even gives you a way to do just that. You can pay 1 and a blue to adapt 1. So here you have a relevant 1-drop, which is nice, because usually you don't. Mm-hmm. And then you have a very cheap adapt cost for a very not impressive adapt. It only makes it into a 2/2. But you're getting a loot out of the deal. I'm kind of into that, I guess.
Yeah, it's a bunch of little things.
Yeah, it's a bunch of little things. Yeah.
You're not happy with a 3-mana 2/2, but this is installment plan, and if you can do it on 1, that's great. And even if you can't do it on 1, you can typically squeeze this in. That's the nature of taking that 3 mana for the 2/2 and splitting it up. You're like, I have a loose blue mana here on turn 4. I'm going to squeeze that in. Mm-hmm. Now I have 2 loose mana on 6, and I'm going to pump it there.
Yeah, which is often when you want to do it later, to get rid of a land or whatever.
But it doesn't add up to anything particularly powerful.
This is like a C to me.
Yeah, I was going to say a C.
Yeah, so Benthic Biomancer gets a C. The one note, of course, is that if you can continually move or put counters onto it, getting to loot continually is really strong.
Yeah, it had some upside if you're getting super synergistic.
Because that's cheap. Next card, what in the absolute... It's called Mass Manipulation. It is blue, 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 XX. That's a real mana cost on a Magic card in this set. It's a sorcery at just regular rare. And boy, this is the sealed killer here. I still can't believe this text. Gain control of X target creatures and or planeswalkers.
I want listener submissions for highest X achieved on digital Magic platforms.
The highest I've seen is only 2, but it was against me, and I'm like, what does this card do? I had never seen it before, and it is a joke. So let's break it down. First things first. It is blue, 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 2 for control magic, right?
6 mana for a control magic, but 4 of it has to be blue.
Right, exactly. Now, if you get up to 8 mana, it's 2 control magics. Now, 10 is completely ridiculous. You get to still 3 things. But let's just look at it as blue, 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 2. Control magic. Where are we at on that, right? The 6 mana I have no problem paying, but we are talking about quad blue.
The quad blue is rough. I do want to mention that it's a sorcery and not an enchantment. You compare it to like Bolas's Clutches. In Bolas's Clutches... which was easier on the blue.
Which was also 6 mana.
Yeah, but it was 6 mana, but much easier to cast on the blue. But it was also an enchantment. So it could be naturalized and you could...
This is way better.
Yeah, right? This is way better because they need to bounce the creature back to their hand, basically, to get it. You can't destroy an enchantment. You can't naturalize your way out of this. And I, too, have only seen it at 2, but I was on the delivering end of that, and it was it felt really nice. But let's talk about the mana, because grading this is tough because you just have to be able to cast it. And one of the ways to look at mana is if you want to cast this on 6, 2/3 of its cost is blue-specific mana. Mm-hmm. So basically, to cast it with 6 lands in play on average, you need 2/3 of your mana base to produce blue. and that's tough to do.
That is tough.
That's like that's basically 11 or 12 sources. It doesn't mean you can't run it if you don't have an 11 or 12 sources. It just means set your expectations that you need to be thinking even longer than just, I have 6 sources. I have 6 lands out, therefore we're going to get there. But if you have a nice controlling deck, then if you're planning to cast an X of 2, then you only about half your lands need to be blue to get there. But then you're talking about an 8-drop. And is this a format where we're resolving 8 drops? And I've only seen this cast and sealed so far.
Same.
And I think this is a little bit slower of a format maybe than typical, than average, but I don't know if we're at, you're just expecting to cast this on 8.
I think you'd want help, right? Like Lockets are your friend here. There's some rares that we'll get to in green, specifically the mana producing one. There's some cards that can help you get to this point and really blow it out. Now, look, this is one of the most powerful rares in the set. It's extremely mana intensive in both color and amount, but this is a game winner straight up, right? I'm actually tempted to give this a very high grade. I think this card is just absolutely amazing. I think that, assuming that you're not thinking that with 6 blue sources in your deck that you're actually going to be able to cast it, you're going to be fine. And I actually want to give Mass Manipulation an A. I think it's amazing.
I can join you there. It's worth working for that mana cost, and you're basically going to know either you're getting this early and you can plan around it the whole draft, or you're already in blue or you're going to take, you're not in blue and you open it and just say bye-bye. So you have to work to be able to cast it, but I think that work is worth it. And I think it's an A, and it's an A because it's a 2-for-1 or a 4-for-1, basically. Yeah. Or, if listeners want to show us your 6 or 8-for-1s,
Yeah, seriously. So Mass Manipulation, unreal card. Also, artwork is fantastic from Anthony Palumbo. That thing is just sick. Next is Mesmerizing Benton. This is a Mythic Rare. It is 3 blue for a 4/5. And when it enters the battlefield, you get 2/0/2 blue illusion creature tokens with, quote, whenever this creature blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and the Benton gets hexproof as long as you control an illusion. This card's great. Yeah, it's a lot of words, but basically it's a 4/5 hexproof for 5 mana that comes with 2 O2s that have upside. It's really strong.
Yeah, we were on the. It's another one. It's another Dowser upgraded, right? But I think this is upgraded even higher than the other.
I think so too. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're getting a 4/5 with hexproof.
Hexproof is big game.
It is a big game, but it's still it doesn't let it attack through things that it couldn't otherwise attack. It's a great defensive card.
That's what I was going to get to. I mean, I'm finding a lot of the times I'm playing Azureus. I'm on my back foot and trying to stabilize and playing that creature, and I need this creature to be removal. I need this creature to blank. I've been playing that Humongulus or the Fibble Thick.
Yeah, I saw that in the stream. I was laughing so hard.
So Fibble Thick is totally playable as a 2/5 hexproof for 5 because of exactly that. It's very comforting as a control deck trying to win through the air or through evasion to drop that on 5 and be like, this is blocking. I don't know what's going to happen exactly the rest of this game, but this guy gets to block.
Yeah, it's a very warm, fuzzy feeling type card, Mesmerizing Benton. What do we want to give it? I have it at it's either an A- or a B+. I'm not in love with it to an extreme level. Yeah,
but
B+ for Mesmerizing Benton.
B+, yeah.
That makes sense to me. All right, next is a pretty good card draw spell, though it's expensive. It's called Precognitive Perception. It is 3 blue for an instant at rare. It has the magic card, the magic words. It says draw 3 cards. So 5 mana, draw 3, sure. And then it's an instant. But it's got addendum. If you cast a spell during your main phase, dang, you scry 3 and then draw the 3 cards.
You may find what you're looking for.
That is huge. I mean, you could get 6 cards deep into your library. By the time you have the 5 mana, lands are probably not at a premium. So you put yourself in a much better position to try to draw 3 spells or, 2.5 spells or whatever. And in limited, for the most part, firing this thing off on your main phase isn't really a huge, it's not, you're not getting such sick value by holding up the 5 mana, right?
Not generally, but know your deck, right? Because that is a big factor. With addendum offering all of these instant versus sorcery decisions, there's just a lot of that going on and a lot of opportunity to play in this set at instant speed. And by that I mean generally passing your turn with all of your mana up and multiple options in hand. That's the key. That's playing at instant speed, is when you can do multiple things at instant speed in your hand so that you have your backup plans. Plan A is counter their bomb. Plan B is cast Precognitive Perception at end of their turn and draw 3 cards. Yeah. So if you have that kind of play at instant speed deck, you should be waiting and casting it at instant speed for that type of purpose.
If you've got absorb,
if you're playing at instant speed, but if not, you get the super cool scribe.
And I've actually played this card a few times. I had it as my my special card at one of the pre-releases I did, and the Scry 3 is ultra powerful. It is, do not sleep on it. It is a huge difference between Scry 3 and just draw 3. I like the card. I think it's really powerful.
Did you have time for it? I mean, that's the question,
I did, but it is very expensive. It is not the type of card that you just always get to do. You have to really kind of play towards it. Like what I found myself doing was trading, blocking, forcing my opponent to kind of just use up cards, because I'm like, I'm going to draw 3-ish spells at some point this game if I'm still alive to do it. And I did, and it's really powerful when you do it that way. What grade is it?
Yeah,
it's a B-.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't sure where you're going with it, because I think LR has been pretty consistent on basically favoring divination effects over this type of
5
effect.
mana flashy
because casting stuck on 3 mana, casting a divination on 4 to find your 4th land and save your game is a huge mode that these draw 3s just don't offer.
Yep. And when you get to do the thing, it's amazing, but you just don't always. So Precognitive Perception gets a B-. Next is Sphinx of Foresight. This card is stacked. Talk about gravy. So 2 blue for a 4/4 flyer at rare. In. That's a B minimum, probably a B+. Then it says at the beginning of your upkeep, you just get to scry 1. So that's like very real gravy. And then, weird, but it says you may reveal this card from your opening hand. Like, look what I got. If you do, scry 3 at the beginning of your first upkeep.
That is crazy.
What the heck? Now, you had this card, right?
Yeah, I did. I had it in sealed, and I was playing on Arena, and I got my opening hand, and it had 1 land, and I just mold it, and as the cards were mulliganing away, I saw the Sphinx on the end of the hand. I'm like, no! So when you have the Sphinx, do not snap mulligan. Remember to check for it, because I absolutely would have kept it if I get to scry 3 with my 1 lander. You just get to...
You get to find land number 2.
You get to find land number 2 unless you're exceedingly unlucky. I
watch your stream. You are exceedingly unlucky.
Well, but even I can find land number 2 with this one.
Okay, so there's a lot going on this card. Vanilla Test Crusher plus real upside. Sphinx of Foresight, is it an A?
Yeah, I just give it an A.
Okay, I think so too. The efficiency's here, the upside's here.
The efficiency is there, and... the power of that scry can really save a game. Like the mulliganing is terrible, and when you can not only keep your hand but be sure you're going to get this thing out. Like, one drawback, I actually have played it several times now, and one interesting thing, one of my patterns of limited is to be like, okay, we're at turn 4, they're playing removal colors. I'm going to bait them with this solid, with this eel. I'm going to play the eel and see if the eel can be the threat that they need to go after. But with the Sphinx of Foresight, when you have it in your opening hand, they just know about it.
Yeah.
And so I just run it out.
Plus it does benefit you the earlier it's on the battlefield because of the upkeep scry, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's just like, well, you already know it's here, so deal with it.
Just don't forget when you have it to do the thing. Yeah. Like, I've seen that too. So Sphinx of Foresight gets an A. Awesome card. Verity Circle is next. It's 2 and a blue for an enchantment. It's rare. It says, whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it wasn't being declared as an attacker, you may draw a card. And then it has an activated ability of 4 and a blue, tap target creature without flying. So I did a little science for the podcast. I actually put this card into my sealed pool at one of my pre-releases. I was not going to run it because it didn't look particularly great to me. Very clunky, very slow. But I decided to run it. To find out for our dear listeners, and I discovered that it is Verity bad. It was super slow, And that includes times when I got to go off with it, meaning I actually had a board state where I could tap 2 things. Now, that is ridiculous. You're drawing 3 cards a turn and tapping down their 2 biggest ground threats. You're going to win that game easy. And I did. But boy, you mulligan, right? Even just looking at 6 cards and you've got Verity Circle in your hand and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, like what does it do until... Oh, nothing. Like,
right.
Just nothing.
Now,
like
it does a little. So I did play this against in an Azureus mirror, which isn't really great because you want to tap down their flyers mainly. But you do draw a card if you get to activate it still, if they have anything on the ground. And, my opponent went turn to Guildmage. And I'm like, okay, my turn. I'm like, Verity Circle, go. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to start looting? Because I'm drawing cards, right?
That did happen to me. I was in a spot where I had to give my opponent a card to use my Guild Mage to win a combat. I decided it was worth it. I get to remove this known card on the battlefield that's a problem and replace it in your hand with something unknown. But that maybe means you can consider it as a sideboard option in some control matchup where your opponent is trying to control through a lot of Guild Mage type activations, maybe. But in general, I agree with you. Like it's too slow.
Yeah. Now I actually want to give Verity Circle a sideboard grade. If you do feel like your opponent is not playing a particularly quick deck and you can activate this, it's good if they have a whole bunch of activated ability creatures like mana creatures or guild mages. I could bring it in. But this card is just deadly slow against the really fast decks. Again, if you hit all your land drops and you turn the corner, it does end up being great. You're drawing multiple cards per turn and it's like a expensive kind of upkeep removal spell. But Verity Circle, too slow to be great. I would give it like a D or a sideboard C.
I'm down with build around or sideboard. Like the other build around is there are some tap effect. There's tap and freeze cantrips at 3 mana, and there's the 5 mana Chillbringer. Yeah. So like but yeah, I think mostly you're going to be correct to avoid it.
Yeah.
But there are some synergies that you could exploit and some sideboard tech you could exploit.
All right, that moves us to Black. Black has some pretty bad ones here from what I've seen. The first one is called Awaken the Erstwhile. It is 3 black for a sorcery at rare. It says each player discards all the cards in their hand, then it creates that many 2/2 black zombie tokens.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out. That's just an F, right?
Yeah, this is the type of thing you try to construct a deck around when you're playing 60 cards to make it imbalanced so that you get 1,000,000 zombies and they get none, and you pack it, you're discarding, you're making them discard. Like it's just constructed.
Yeah, it's just
here we're F.
Yeah, but it's an F for Awaken the Erstwhile. Next is called Font of Agonies. It's black for an enchantment. Whenever you pay life, put that many blood counters on Font of Agonies. Now, this is life as a cost, not whenever you lose life, but pay it. So you have to really start thinking about how many times you actually are going to pay life with your deck. And it has an activated ability, 1 into black, remove 4 blood counters from it and to destroy a creature. So the upside's obviously absurd, right? If you get to remove the counters and kill 1 creature, that's a big deal. Especially given that it's only 3 mana and it's the, how did you put it? The installment plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the problem is that you need infinite cards in your deck that say, I'm going to pay some life to do something. And that just doesn't seem to be the case in this set.
Yeah. I don't see where the engine is. If there was it's possible there's some ingredient that I don't understand in the set yet, but I haven't seen anything that I can remember that says, hey, you can rack up 4 counters on this very easily. So I have this at an F until you show me that there's some engine I should care about.
So I just did a quick search for pay life in this set. Mm-hmm. The first card is Font of Agonies. Then Stomping Ground, Hallowed Fountain, Godless Shrine, Blood Crypt, and Breeding Pool. Okay. And the only other one is Final Payment. That has the exact phrase pay life. Mm-hmm. Now, there may be other things that will count towards that I'm not finding on this search.
I think we can F this safely.
It's an F. Next is Gutterbones. The OGB is black for a 2/1 Skeleton Warrior at rare, enters the battlefield tapped. So black for a 2/1 that ETB's tapped. How are we feeling about that? Meh, right?
Meh, yeah.
That's not even that good. That's like a C- or a D+. It does have a nice ability. You can pay 1 in a black and return it from your graveyard to your hand, but you can only do it if an opponent lost life this turn. I don't know. Maybe in a sacrifice deck or something,
I've seen it in play and not be terrible.
Me
but
too.
I've never seen it in play and have thought, well, that's really good.
Wow.
It's pressuring me, or I just feel like the format has enough defense that, yeah, you can get cute with it. And there's it's more of an engine card to me. If you find synergies that allow you to gain value from sacrifice, and you have easy spectacle enabling, maybe it can be part of an engine.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, like in a really aggressive deck, I guess it's fine. Right?
From aggro Rakdos, that's also the kind of deck doing sacrificing. So,
so where are we at here? C on Gutter Bones?
Yeah,
C minus?
C minus actually.
Right? Like,
I mean, it does have like. It can be pesky in that it always seems to come back. It's just that by the time it's coming back late, you just don't care.
No, that's why ETB's tapped.
Yeah,
so like
I'm gonna settle on C minus.
Okay, C minus for Gutter Bones. Next black card is called Pestilence Spirit, which somehow isn't a magic card yet. Right? That's one of those, like, they found a name. And
Blank
it's really
Spirit.
Good. Yeah, and it's really good. It's 2 and a black for a 3/2 Spirit. It's rare. It has a really cool combination of abilities. It has Menace and Death Touch and more than 1 power, which is like really neat. Like if they want to get rid of this thing, they're going to have to lose blocking, 2 creatures. Yeah, via blocking, they're going to have to lose 2 creatures. And it has kind of cool extra text. It says instant and sorcery spells you control have, Death Touch. Your spells have Death Touch. And it puts in parentheses just in case that's confusing, which it kind of is. Any amount of damage they deal to a creature is enough to destroy it. So it makes your red burn spells 2 blades.
Yeah, and there's the white common one as well. If you end up in Orzhov, you can the deal 3. So I mean, that's deals 3 or 5. Generally, you can manipulate that to do the damage you need it to do. But if they do have some 9/9 or whatever, you can take it out for 2 mana.
Yeah. So I just see this card as being like all upside. I don't see anything bad. It's even a good blocker. Like it has Death Touch. Like, if you're playing against Gruel and they're like, I'm coming over with my 5/5, you can be like, sure, block, Yeah,
I have played it and it has done all of that. It is very annoying it's plays all corners of the game well, all quadrants. It's fine on 3. It's fine late. It can when you're behind, it might be the Death Touch you need. When you're ahead, it's like block this. And it has a lot of interesting synergistic combo potential that has... I had this in a deck with Gates Ablaze.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah. So
that's incredible. You actually want to do it for 1 so that your Pestilence Spirit survives. Everything else dies.
Yeah. Everything would die, right?
Oh, it kills itself? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. My bad.
It's just,
might as well do it for 5 then, whatever.
But, it was a fun little build your own wrath.
That's great. I want to actually give this a fairly big grade. Like, I actually want to give this a B+. I was going to be on B, but boy, turning your Scorch Marks into kill anything is great. And the card is just, there's nothing to complain about on
I think that's fine. It can be, sometimes we want really to see, almost 2-for-1, solid 2-for-1 potential out of, a B+ or whatever. But this does have that on the attack. And it is just a pile up of abilities that just, where are we on a 3/2 for 3? That's a C minus D or D. That's more like D.
Yeah.
D.
It's card you don't really want. Fearless Halberdier was the classic D.
Yeah. So this is that's going a long way, right?
Yeah.
From D to B+ on Menace, Death Touch, and giving your instants and stuff Death Touch.
It is.
So I'm going to give you the B+ in Rakdos specifically, where you have a lot of red burn spells to throw around.
It does seem to be perfectly positioned.
I think it's more like a B in Orzhov, but I like it in that range.
Okay, Pestilence Spirits, B+, depending on which guild you're in. 2 more black cards. First one is called Priest of Forgotten Gods. It's 1 and a black for a 1/2 human cleric at rare. And it has a tap ability. Tap, sacrifice 2 other creatures. Can't sacrifice itself. Any number of target players each lose 2 life, and sacrifice a creature. Now they get to choose it, but still. And you get 2 mana, they're both black, and you draw a card. That's a laundry list of stuff.
It is, but what does it add up to? Does it add up to something you care about?
Yeah, it does. I think it's actually pretty good. You do have to give up a lot. You're sacrificing 2 creatures, but they're down a creature as well. So depending on the situation, that can be really good or pretty mediocre. The 2 life is relevant, right? It's okay. But you get a card, so it's even on cards theoretically, right?
Yeah,
they're
you're 2 creatures for their creature and your card.
And then they throw in double black mana so that this somehow produces mana, and now you can cast the card that you drew or 2 cards that turn or whatever. Now, you do need expendable creatures. I mean, I view this as a very Orzhov-specific card.
Definitely.
But in that situation, I really like it. I really do. Like, I don't like paying such a steep cost. I usually hate cards that have me take away so much board presence. But think about some of the matchups that you faced. Against Azureus, this card's awesome, right? It's just going to kill their creature. Against Gruel, this card's great. Against Simic, this card's great. Against Orzhov, it's not. It's actually pretty bad against
that out.
And I actually think that it's not very good against Rakdos either.
Yeah, and I don't know about great. Like, I've had it be effective against me.
Me too.
It was played against me in a spot where I had to kill it because my creatures were down so low that I couldn't afford to lose any blockers. Mm-hmm. So I had precious removal that I had to spend on it because I needed all of my creatures, and they had expendable stuff being black-white. And so in that case it was good, but I feel like you really need to set this up with lots of afterlife and frankly just lots of removal. Mm-hmm. If you're going to give an opponent the choice of what they sacrifice, you need to be narrowing that choice down, which is what my opponent did against me for it to be so effective. Mm-hmm. They had used their removal on the things, their cheap removal that could only get the small thing, got the small thing, and then I was left with the must-keep creature and had to protect it. I don't think I'm as high on it as you are, though. But maybe I'll come up. I see it as like a kind of a clunky C plus B minus. You see much higher.
I have it at B.
You have it at B?
I just think it's a B. Yeah, I think that, I mean, you know, what we probably should do is say it's a build around B. Like, I just wouldn't throw this in any deck.
Yeah.
You know, so keep that in mind.
Have a plan.
Yeah, so Priest of Forgotten Gods gets build around B-ish. Last black card is called Spawn of Mayhem. It is 2 black. It's mythic, by the way. It's a demon. 2 black for a 4/4 Flampler, flying and trample. It says, at the beginning of your upkeep, Spawn of Mayhem deals 1 damage to each player. Then, if you have 10 or less life, you put a +1/+1 counter on Spawn of Mayhem. And it has more. It says it has a spectacle cost of 1 black.
Remember when demons like really hurt you? You really had to take some pain in order to run a demon?
Yeah, Lord of the Pit looks at this and goes, really, dude? Yeah, Spawn of Mayhem is awesome. This card is fantastic. If you spectacle it out, it's a joke, right? If you just get in with your 2-drop and go Spawn of Mayhem on turn 3, it's just over.
That happened to me yesterday, and it was over.
Extremely frustrating. Also, at the beginning of your upkeep, it does 1 damage. Well, we know what that means. It is enabling all of your spectacle every single turn. Mm-hmm. It also is helping you race because even if it only hits for 4 damage in the air, I say kind of flippantly, but it's also 1 extra, so it's hitting for 5. How is your opponent supposed to race that? There's no way outside of another Mythic Rare or whatever. This is simply a must kill. And then if your life total gets low, it starts to become a 5/5 and a 6/6 and a 7/7. And guess what? Their life total's gone. So... Yeah, to me, Spawn of Mayhem is an A. I just think it's an absolutely power-punched, efficient creature that goes perfectly. I would play it in either, but obviously it's the prime Rakdos card.
Yeah, I don't know how we could give that anything but an A if we stand by Sphinx of Foresight at an A as well.
Right.
You know, they're very similar. Like, you're already happy with this 4/4 flyer for 4. Let's give you some gravy. Yep. And that gravy adds up to an A.
Okay, red is next. It's Amplifier first. It's 2 red for a 1/1 elemental at a rare. So pretty bad to start with, but it's kind of interesting. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature. So you go flip. Okay, here's a creature. Until your next turn, now take a minute to sink that in. Until your next turn, not until the end of the turn, Amplifier's base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice its toughness. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, the first note that I'll make is that you reveal, let's say you reveal 4 cards. It's like land, creature. Then Amplifier gets its bonus. all 4 of those cards are getting shuffled up and put on the bottom.
Including the creature. You don't get to keep that creature.
You don't get to draw it. You don't know that you're going to draw it. Like, it just goes away. Then you just get your normal draw step. So let's think about this, because it doesn't add it to the 1/1. It becomes that. So worst case scenario here is, assuming that it survives, is you play Amplifier, you say go. Your opponent goes, thing, go. You reveal and you hit a 2/2. That's usually the smallest creature you'll have in a deck, especially that has red in it.
Right.
And that means that you have a 4/4 right off the bat. Right? Yep. Just boom. It gets double its power, double its toughness. It's a 4/4. That's already fine. Right? I mean, 2 red is I'd pay that for a 4/4, and occasionally it's a 16/16 or whatever if you hit a Colossus or something stupid and huge, right? If you hit a 4/4, it's an 8/8 creature the next turn. Like, it has no evasion. It has no ability to protect itself.
Big and dumb, but it's just like...
It's also very fragile, and at 1/1, it dies to every removal card in the set, right? I mean, that's the bottom line, is that, like, there is no removal.
1-turn window, and it's fragile as can be.
Right. Now, one question I have is that is there actually a 1-turn window? Because, so let's say you play it, you say go, your opponent says go, it becomes a 4/4, you attack, whatever. You say go, it's still a 4/4 on their turn, and then they go. Isn't it a 1/1 with the ability on the stack?
Yes.
Okay, so then they can be like Scorch Mark.
You do have a window, but I believe.
Yeah, I think so too. So it is very fragile, and it doesn't have evasion. These are things that I don't like about it.
Right.
What I do like about it is that it can be huge. Just like
its average
massive.
case is way above rate.
Way above rate. It's probably average 6/6.
Yeah.
Or something like that, right? 4 mana 6/6 that you're attacking with the next turn. And it does block. That's the other thing, is that it's not a 1/1. It's a 6/6 if you're not attacking, if you reveal a 3/3 or whatever.
Don't play any... What's the star, the XX... don't play any 0/0s that get counters when they enter the battlefield.
Like Walking Ballista, whoops. So where are we at on it? Because to me, this is a really interesting card. Like you said, it's on average above rate. It is extremely fragile, and it does not have any form. It doesn't even have trample. So even if you do get lucky and spike, and it's like, oh, it's a 10/10, they can be like, block with my token.
I like it at B-B. That may seem high for something that's not evasive, but it's just so big so much of the time.
Yeah.
And
Keyword big.
If it didn't have a window of shields down where like the 1 damage could sneak in, then I think it's definitely a B. I think maybe it gets knocked down to B- because it has an ongoing window of that.
Yeah.
But if we were reviewing a 4 mana green creature that was just a 6/6.
Yeah, it'd be a B.
We'd
be a minimum B.
Minimum B, maybe B+, just because so big. And it's going to be that a lot. It just has these windows of vulnerability that require us to bring it down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I like B- for Amplifier. Cool card, too. I think it'll be fun to play. Next is, wow, this card's really powerful. I've died to this a lot. Electro Dominance. Weird, too. Red X for an instant at rare. It says, Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. So... 5 mana, deal 3 to anything. Mm-hmm. Okay. Not particularly mana efficient, but it's an instant, right? It kills something. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So now it's kill your 3 toughness creature, put my 3-drop into play.
Yes.
Yikes.
I've played with this, and it is powerful, but not really for the X. Like you got to really work to it's like, okay, there's a creature I can kill. Like I got 5 mana up or 6 mana up, and I can get that 3 or that 4. But in the mid-turns, the ability is very relevant and important. I had a turn where an instant is important as well. I just
in combat.
Yeah, and you can play the thing no matter what it is. So like my play out of the blue in combat, I managed to, burn their thing out and actually played a locket.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I played a locket off of the Electro Dominance, but then with the 1 mana left on the locket, used like the add +1/+1 counter and untap a creature. And so I had a nice blowouty combat.
And how do you ever play around that? Right?
Yeah.
That's just a joke. Also, look, if you're a big mana deck, this thing goes to the face.
Yep.
You can just craft a game plan where you get up to 7 mana and just Lava Axe your opponent.
Yeah, but the X spell has fallen out of dominance in limited, like the Blaze or Fireball in old sets was just always like the best thing you could open. Things have changed enough now that it's powerful but not absurd. And this is an extra red. You know, you're really not, your X isn't that high.
Yeah.
Without a lot of mana.
I think the use case is normally what you described, which is a more middle ground approach. You know, where you're going to cast it for 5 or 6 mana for the most part, and then get a 4 or 5, 3 or 4 drop from your hand onto the battlefield or cast as well. And that's just insane.
And those are 2 great modes. Yeah, mid turns, turn 4 through 6, getting extra stuff out of your hand, basically getting double your mana for that turn is very powerful. And then if you make it to the late game and it X is 8 or whatever, it's probably just going to win you the game.
Agreed. I like Electro Dominance a lot. I'm going to give it an A-.
That's where I had it.
Yeah. So Electro Dominance for A- gets an A-. Next is Immolation Shaman, 1 and a red for a 1/3, which is kind of a weird stats combo for a Viashino Shaman in red.
Yeah.
But
at rare.
At rare. But it does have two lines of text here. So the first one is, whenever an opponent activates the ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, it does 1 damage to that player, which is like whatever. You know, you activate your Guild Mage and it pings them. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. But it has a nice activated ability itself. 3 red, and it gets +3/+3 and menace until end of turn.
4/6 menace.
Yeah, off your
5.
2-drop. Sure. I mean, I'm in. Like, whatever. This is a kind of a not super exciting but reasonable card. I would play this in any red deck. I am not excited about it. I think it's a C+ for Immolation Shaman.
Fine. It's kind of weird. Like, without that first brick of text, I would think this was a common, you know?
Yeah.
But because it pings on activation, that makes it a rare? I don't know. It's a little underwhelming. I'm with you on the grade.
Yeah. So,
you know, do you really... Yeah. I've played against it, though, and wow, suddenly...
Yeah,
the game slowed down, and it matters that you have this 4/6. 4/6 menace is tough to manage, but...
Totally. But yeah, whatever. Not a super exciting card, Immolation Shaman. Next is Mirror March. It's 5 and a red for an enchantment. It's rare. It says, whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you win, you get a token that's a copy. Those tokens gain haste. Exile them at the beginning of the next end step.
This is a 6 mana do nothing if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. I love... Can I designery for a second?
Sure.
Like, I love the design of this because it creates stories. Mm-hmm. When you create a coin flipping situation like this where the odds get worse and worse but are not nothing, you create this situation where every 128 times or whatever, somebody gets a bunch of these, you know, and they just have a wonderful story to tell. So I like the story equity in this card.
It is an F, though, right?
It is. We're not
a resounding F for Mirror March.
You don't have time to do this.
What if you played this already a huge tax, then played a creature, just lose the flip? Mm-hmm. It's like, no. Mirror March gets an F. Don't play it. Next is Rixmati Reveler, 1 and a red for a 2/2 human shaman at rare, and it says when it enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. But it also has Spectacle for 2 black-red. So it's actually one of the ones that costs more on Spectacle, including an additional color. But if you Spectacle it, instead you discard your whole hand and you draw 3 cards.
The whole hand is tougher to make good use of in limited. In constructed, you can really build a low-to-the-ground beast that you can really use that. But I think for limited purposes, we really want to look at the baseline Grizzly Bear we have here and the ETB Rummage, and that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. It's optional, right? You can do it if you want. So yeah, C+ for Rixmati Reveler. It's probably creeps up near the B range if you can really get that Spectacle going at the right time, but that is tricky. Yeah. Last red card is called Skargan Hellkite, and it is sweet. It's the Mythic Rare. It is 3 red for a 4/4 flying Riot Dragon, so it can either be a 5/5 or a 4/4 with haste. But you're really going to want to go for the 5/5 most of the time because it has an activated ability, 3 and a red. It does 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets, but you can only activate the ability if the Hellkite has that +1/+1 counter on it. So unless you're killing your opponent either this turn or next to get the haste, it's probably going to be correct most of the time for you to go ahead and put the counter on so that you can start spraying around 2 damage however you like. That is extremely powerful.
It is. It's not exactly a glory seeker or glory bringer, but it is definitely up there.
I mean, I give it an A. Like the Scarrian Hellkite just looks like just a classic dragon bomb.
Classic dragon A.
Yep.
Glory bringer's like A+.
Yeah, there you go. It is. It is actually an A. We gave it an A+. All right, green, and then we'll get to the gold card. So first card is the big home run, I think, for this one. It's called Biogenic Ooze, and this card is sick. I've had it multiple times. I'm very lucky. It is 3 green for a 2/2. Now, Ryan, I know at first blush you're not thrilled with that, but
I think we know what that means.
I've got more. Since it's a mythic, right? So when it enters the battlefield, you get another 2/2 ooze. So straight up, you get 2 2/2s for 5 mana, which is already pretty good. And then this is where things get stupid. At the beginning of your end step, you put a +1/+1 counter on each ooze you control. So that's both of them. So assuming that these both survive to the end step, you have now 2 3/3s for 5 mana. And it has an activated ability, 1 green. Now, don't overlook that. It is a little tricky. It's only 4 mana, but it's triple green to make a 2/2 ooze during your main phase so that you get the counter on it at the end step. It is stupid.
Is this an A+? Maybe it's still just an A.
I have it as A,
because it can still be killed, but it's like, here's a framing for it. We were just in Rivals of Ixalan recently or whatever, where they had a 5 mana uncommon that is a 3/3 and makes a 3/3. Full stop. That was great. That was first pickable. You're like, this is maybe a reason to be in the Dino deck right here. This does that effectively at its baseline.
Yep.
If you never activate it again, but they both stick around, they both get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and then it's 4, 4, 5, 5.
And if you actually activate it, oh my goodness.
It's a complete joke. Yeah. Now, I think that I would just give Biogenic Ooze an A. The reason I don't give it an A+ is because of what we said before. Look, it is a 2/2. If they have Scorch Mark, you are left with just a 2/2 Ooze token. Now, that is still a great deal. That's why it's an A. But they can use basically any instant speed kill card, not necessarily just removal, but kill card to take care of the Biogenic Ooze. One of the interesting things, though, is that if they do use the Law Mage's binding on it, you can't activate it anymore, but the triggered ability still happens. So it will grow, which isn't super relevant because it can't attack or block, but its friend will keep getting bigger and bigger.
Gets bigger,
Yeah, so
it dodges
not
some
like
removal.
It does, and it really does a pretty good job of dodging a lot of the sorcery speed removal where, look, if I'm left with a 2/2, I'm not, and they use a removal spell, I'm ahead in that transaction, but I got a lot of work to do to win the game. If I'm left with a 3/3, if I untap or they untap and they go sorcery speed removal, kill your Biogenic Ooze, I'm like, I can live with that. That's a straight up 2-for-1 in my favor.
Yeah.
So, I give an A to Biogenic Ooze. It plays like an A+ in situations where your opponent doesn't have instant speed removal, though.
Yeah, be careful and don't try not to play it into open mana either for counterspell reasons or instant speed removal purposes. If you can just play it when it shields down, you're just guaranteed value.
It's so good. So Biogenic Ooze, one of the best rares in the set, an A. End Raise Forerunners is next. It's 5 green. So we're talking about an 8 mana boar, and it is a 7/7 with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. And when it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+true and gain Vigilance and Trample until end of turn. So the real question here for me is the power level's clearly there.
Yeah, 8 mana win the game.
Right, 8 mana win the game, but what about 8 mana?
Yeah, and actually I've had it, and it's not necessarily 8 mana win the game too. That's the thing.
It's
kind of shorthand for it, but
the fact that
not even 100%.
It has Vigilance, and it gives your other creatures Vigilance, plus the pump means that you can, it's pretty close to just like Mathis for blockers, attack with everything. Look, raw power-wise, this thing packs all the punch that you would possibly need. It is 8 mana with triple green. It is not easy to cast.
Yeah, you should not be expecting to cast this without help. I ran it because I had Locket. I had, I think, the rare
Incubation
Druid that we'll get to very shortly here, and actually another one we'll get to in the gold, the red-green mana doubler. And so it was also, and it was so like. It was a sealed deck, I think, and it was all just coming together. Like, we got to try this.
Yeah. And I've played it in my Gates deck that I've been drafting as well, and it was great. I mean, look, when you need inevitability, when you want the big finish, and Raise Forerunners does it. I would grade it for the purposes of, drafting it or whatever.
Where are you drafting it?
I give it, a B. I think that you're never just throwing this in a random deck, right? Like our listeners
called build around B?
Yep, build around B. Sure. There you go. Build around. Well, as a build around, actually, I give it an A. Like, I think that this, like, if you make a game plan around getting End-Raze Forerunners down, you will win most of the time that you cast it. It is very close to cast this card, win the game.
But to me, build around A means you should pick this at A level and then build around it because the payoffs are so...
Okay, sure. I mean, in that case, I would give it like a B+.
Yeah, build around B+ is a reasonable place to land.
Build around B+ for End-Raze Forerunners. Make sure you have the mana, but the power's there. Growth Chamber Guardian is next. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Crab Warrior at rare. And here's the important part. It has 2 and a green, adapt 2. So right there, you're just in.
Yeah,
right?
We talked at the top about my love of good 2-drops.
And
this is a great 2-drop.
Totally.
And because of the installment plan.
Right. 4 mana, or excuse me, a 4/4 that you get down on turn 2, you activate it on turn 3. They can never block it on turn 3 ever. And sometimes you just activate it anyway and just hit them for 4 and say, look, this thing's just going to smash you for 3 or 4 times before you get your feet under you. There is other text if you're very lucky. Whenever one or more counters or +1/+1 counters are placed on it, you can search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian and put it in your hand and then shuffle. So if you do get 2 of them, when you adapt this one, you get to go get another, which is absolutely absurd. Yeah. You should absolutely take the second one, but of course you'll have to get really lucky because any deck playing green wants this card full stop. So
fetching a second Guardian is on my bucket list for this set.
Yeah, somebody did it against me. Yeah. I'm like, really? I give Growth Chamber Guardian a B+ for efficiency. I just think this card is an absolute house. A 4/4 that's attacking on turn 3 gets in for 12 like every game.
Yeah, I think B+ is fair. That reflects my excitement level when I see it in the pack. Pack one, pick one, right? Mm-hmm. It's like B+ level, like, oh, sweet, we're taking that and we're happy.
Super strong. And it's totally fine late in the game, too. Next is called Guardian Project. It is 3 and a green for an enchantment. This is kind of interesting. Whenever, it's rare, by the way, whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature another creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, draw a card. So this is similar to the Beastmaster guy, the 2/3, but from Dominaria, but it's an enchantment, so it doesn't attack or block on its own, which carries with it some benefits and some downsides. In Limited, though, it basically says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it's not a token, draw card.
It basically does. I mean, count your unique creatures. Some decks are going to have weird cases where they get the frustrating dupes that are non-bow with this, but for the most part, it's just cantrip your creatures. So what's that worth at 4 mana?
It's a tough sell, right? 4 mana do nothing is a really tough pill to swallow for the green decks. But if I'm playing Simic, like I'm kind of in for this. Like it is super powerful as long as your opponent isn't just running you over at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're playing it every time. I want to compare this to like what we get from a divination or from the blue rare we looked at, where you get, blue is offering you 2 cards for 3 mana and 3 cards for 5 mana, basically. And here's a card for 4 mana offering you some number of cards in the future. So I just like to look at these
1 to 10 cards.
Yeah, but I want to look at this at where I'm going to be happy, right? And so at 2 cards, I'm disappointed. 2 cards we have, it's divination is much worse divination, delayed gratification divination even. At 3, okay. We're back even.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
4, now you're starting to run away with the game.
Yeah.
But that's 4, that's like 5 turns later, right?
Yeah.
First turn you cast this, and then turns 2 through 5, you curve out on creatures from there or whatever and finally get your value back.
It does feed itself.
Yes.
Right? You're drawing cards off of a creature. It gives you a higher chance of finding a creature. You would want to play it in a deck that was playing more creatures than a light, like I would say 15 to 18 creatures would be better than 11 to 12.
Yeah, you definitely want the high creature count.
I would board it out against aggro decks. If my opponent's playing Rakdos, I am not playing this card.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So
I think you're starting it, though.
I do, too.
When it's good, it is going to be amazing.
I'll tell you what, Azureus does not want to see Guardian Project at the battlefield. No. And in Sealed, it seems particularly good as well. So I like Guardian Project okay, but I'm not super high on it. I would give it a C+. Like, I'm not trying to say, like, oh, I got a Guardian Project, I'm in. It's fine. It comes at a very heavy setup cost. This is not just, like, free value.
Yeah, I think you may be in the right territory. I think the format may be slow enough to support this at a B- level, but I'm a little nervous.
Okay, I am too. Also, when you mulligan and like it, when you're behind, it's terrible. Like there's a lot to not like about Guardian Project.
Yeah, it's the old top deck of like.
Yeah.
It's worse than a forest because at least I identify a forest as useless immediately.
Yeah, totally. You're like, oh, 4-drop. Next is Incubation Druid, the card you mentioned a few minutes ago. It's 1 and a green for a 0/2 Elf Druid. Really powerful card though. It taps to add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. And then if it has a +1/+1 counter on it, it adds 3 mana of that type instead. And you can put +1/+1 counters on it via Adapt. 3 green for Adapt 3. And of course, one of the cool tricks about this is that you can use its own tap ability to make mana to pay for the Adapt as well.
Yeah, because the Adapt cost does not have a tap associated with it.
Right. So I've gotten people with this where I had 4 lands in the Druid and they're like, attack you with my 3/3. And I go block with the Druid, then activate the Adapt and eat their 3/3. And they're like, oh, I didn't see that. And I'm like, yes, you did not. And then untap and dump your hand because now you've got this elf that makes 3 mana. I love this card. To me, Incubation Druid is like a B. I take it highly. I play it. I'm excited about it. I think it's just super, super good.
I was going to say B+ because I have the same level of excitement about it, and I see it in a pack as I do with that Growth Chamber Guardian, which is like, oh, sweet, I am going to take this. I'm going to be happy about it. I'm going to build around it.
B+. You talked me into it. I kind of wanted to anyway. So Incubation Druid gets a B+. Really strong card. Last green card is called Rampage of the Clans. It is 3 and a green for an instant. At rare, it says destroy all artifacts and enchantments. For each permanent destroyed this way, its controller creates a 3/3 green centaur creature token. I was going to say sideboard. I just instead give it an F.
Yeah, I don't see
terrible
why we're running like
not unlimited. No, because you're only going to hit one thing and then they get a 3/3. You might have upgraded it.
Yeah, this is a constructed card to turn your treasure tokens into win conditions or something.
Oh, that's what it is. You're right.
This is not for limited.
Yeah, so F for Rampage of the Clans. That brings us to our gold cards, and we're just going to go straight through in alphabetical order here rather than trying to pick through each guild or whatever. It ends up being harder to follow if you're following along at home. So first card up is Absorb. White, blue for an instant at rare. Counter target spell. You gain 3 life. Very powerful. Significantly better than it looks. It's significantly better than Thought Collapse. But if you can't cast the white part, don't worry about it. I take Absorb actually higher than it looks like I would take it. But that being said, I still have Absorb at like a C+. I don't think it's like a Super Bomb Unlimited.
No, it's really a glorified cancel, a glorified whatever that other one you just mentioned was, the Thought Collapse.
Yeah, that's the mill one.
It is, counters have proven their value in this format so far, though, for the Azureus strategy and the Simic strategy. This obviously not being Simic, but like just counter spells seem to have a role here.
Totally. And this is great. Get you out from being behind.
I like the C+.
Okay. C+ for Absorb. Mm-hmm. Next is Bedevil. And Bedevil is black, red for an instant at rare. It says destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. So we have effectively unconditional removal here at instant speed with the ability to pick off planeswalkers, which doesn't come up often, but when it does, it's great. It has the ability to pick off artifacts, which doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's great. And then it can kill any creature, which is, of course, the primary mode in Limited. The downside to this card is the casting cost. It's black, red. It is hard to cast this thing.
Yep. You don't necessarily need to cast it on turn 3 very often, though, so you're going to get there if you're in a straight Rakdos deck. I'm not too concerned about the cost. But as a 3 mana instant, if we think of like a 2 mana instant, basically kill any creature is the level that can get a removal spell to A-, this looks like a B+ to me.
Me too. B+ for Bedevil. Premium removal, but only for that guild or the 5-color deck. Next is Biomancer's Familiar. Weird card. It's blue-green for a 2/2 mutant. It's rare. And it says activated abilities of creatures you control cost 2 less to activate, but it can't make it less than 1 mana. So what this is designed for is to make your Adapt cheaper.
Yeah.
And then it has tap. The next time target creature adapts this turn, It adapts as though it had no +1/+1 counters on it. Because if you remember, adapt does not allow you, nothing happens if you adapt and it has a +1/+1 counter on it already. So this lets you adapt again and again and again, and for cheap. This card seems super explosive to me in the adapt deck.
I faced it if you don't kill this and you let adapt decks take advantage of this, you're just going to be overwhelmed.
Like, let's do a use case. Skittering Eel, 3 and a blue, 3/3, adapt 2 and a blue. It puts 2 +1/+1 counters on it. So if I tap this, I can pay blue to put 2 +1/+1 counters on it.
Yeah, you can pay blue.
Can I do it again?
Yeah.
The next time target creature adapts this turn. So it only lets it do it.
Well, if you have not adapted yet.
Oh, so you're saying I can do it that next turn twice?
No, so you have this guy, you have your eel and this guy sitting there.
Yeah,
and the eel.
Right. If the eel doesn't have counters on it yet, I get to do it twice. Right. But still, even just for the 1 mana, like, that is absurd.
Yeah, and that's like I almost beat Sharktopus and Biomancer's Familiar in the pre-release last weekend, and then they added the eel to the table, and this is like I can't.
This is absurd.
I can't stop it all.
So how good is this card in? Because look, this looks like a build around to me for the adapt.
I was going to say build around B+.
Okay, I like that for Biomancer's Familiar, because this, if you've ever faced this, you're like, oh, and it's very, very powerful. So build around B+ for Biomancer's Familiar. Next is called Captive Audience. It's mythic. It is 5 red-black. Boy, 7 mana in Rakdos. I am very skeptical already. It's an enchantment, and when it enters a battlefield Captive Audience enters the battlefield under the control of an opponent of your choice. In other words, your opponent. At the beginning of your upkeep, and remember, this is now talking to the opponent. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Your life total becomes 4. Ow. Discard your hand. Each opponent creates 5 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. So as a finisher, this is absurd, kind of. It's slow.
It's funny.
It's funny, and slow.
Absurd.
Yeah. Now, I don't like it in Rakdos because it costs 7 mana, and like the discard your hand might be like, okay, fine, I'm going to pitch my land. Yeah, exactly. But like in the 5-color deck, in the Gates deck, I love it because you just like go, and they are going to get got at some point. It does win you the game, right? Like what 3-turn sequence that you don't get ran over in, can they win if their life total's 4, you have 5 2/2s, and they have no cards left, right?
Right.
It's not going to
probably starts on discard the hand because you've emptied your hand anyway. I mean, it's just inevitability in a really effective way. And like a lot of these Orzhov decks, and to an extent Azureus, gain a lot of incidental life. And that ability to be like, I'm not worried about actually your life. Yeah, congratulations, you're at 35 thanks to the lifelink or whatever. But I'm going to win with this thing that just takes you wherever you are and puts you to 4.
But this is a build-around card, and it doesn't go in Rakdos, so I don't really get it.
I mean, it's like a control card. Yes. It doesn't really go in Rakdos, but I don't necessarily even need to call it build-around. It's just more control. Sure. And that's one of the reasons, that's why grading is tough. It's like, it is an F for an aggro Rakdos deck, and it's a solid B+ finisher for a controlling Gate deck or maybe an Orzhov deck splashing this. So very tough for me to grade. So we can cop out with the build around. That seems fine to me.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just look. It's a homeless build around. That's like the only deck that I actually can imagine really being happy is the 5-color deck or the 4 or 5-color, like the Gates deck that you're playing all the Gate payoffs in. So so Captive Audience, weird, kind of homeless, but powerful ultimately card. Cindervines is next. It is green-red for a enchantment. It's rare. It says whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, it does 1 damage to that player. I'm not really into that. Limited is primarily about creatures. Most people's spell density is roughly 2/3 creatures, so that's not great. And then you can pay 1 mana and sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. It does 2 damage to that permanent's controller. Sure. I mean, I guess this is some type of sideboard card, but even then I'm not really that stoked on it.
That is a lot of text to say sideboard naturalize.
Yeah, I agree. So sideboard C for Cindervines. I mean, look, it does some things, but you better have a real good target for it or else you're not bringing it in. Next is Deputy of Detention. It is 1 white-blue for a Vidalcan Wizard. It's a 1/3. And when it enters the battlefield, you exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls. So that's creature, artifact, whatever they got. And all other non-land permanents that player controls with the same name as that permanent until Deputy of Detention leaves the battlefield. So a few things come to mind. First off, sweet, right? Just play this, kill your thing. You have to kill this before you get your thing back. That's nice. Tokens. Boy, this thing's going to slaughter them, right? 1/1 flying spirit tokens, just kill all of them.
Seems nice.
That's really good. This card's super powerful.
It is. Do you like it? If I offered you this without it being as an enchantment, no power and toughness, but as an enchantment, would you take the enchantment or the creature?
I'd take the enchantment.
Yeah, right. Because I just want to call that out. You can seem like Deputy of being a creature is an upside on this kind of thing, but it makes it more vulnerable to going away and vulnerable to blowouts. Be very, very careful getting this creature involved in combat, and be very, very careful getting your other creatures involved in combat when something under the Deputy would be devastating if it reemerged.
Totally.
So watch out for that.
Yeah, I like it in Azureus. Obviously, it's an Azureus card, but I mean, I like it in that game plan because it has a lot of flyers. And, there's a decent chance that you're like, put your Airings under my Deputy of Detention, attack you with my flyers, and if they get their Airings back, okay, that sucks, but like, you're not getting blown out.
Right.
That said, Deputy of Detention is very powerful. It's only 3 mana, kills anything. I like it a lot. I would give Deputy of Detention a B+, even with the fragile stuff going on there.
I'm going to give it a B.
B? Okay.
Yeah.
Deputy of Detention.
It's like A- if they don't mess with it.
Yeah, it's just an A. Yeah,
right.
It's an A if they don't mess with it, or maybe it kills anything.
It kills anything.
That versatility matters.
That's that.
Have you ever lost to Ethereal Absolution? Because I have.
Yeah. Nice to be able to have an answer for that.
Yeah. So B+ for Deputy of Detention.
Yeah.
Really good card. Domri Chaosbringer is next. It's one of a few. I think there's 3 planeswalkers in this set. It's 2 green-red. For a 5 loyalty planeswalker. So 4 mana, 5 loyalty. That's really good. And legendary planeswalker Domri at Mythic. +1, you add green or red. If that mana is spent on a creature, it gets Riot. That's powerful.
Yep.
The -3 is costly. Takes Domri from 5 to just 2 loyalty. But it's pretty powerful. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them and put them in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So if you're creature heavy, you could draw 2 creatures off of that. And then the -8 is you get an emblem with, at the beginning of each end step, create a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample. So a pretty typical play pattern there. You can use it to dump your hand +++, and then go ultimate, which is pretty game winning. It's not like win the game literally right now, but it's every end step. Your opponent's not beating that. This is a good planeswalker, not a great planeswalker, but in the world of limited, a good planeswalker is great. So I like Domri quite a bit. I've had a chance to play him. He's really solid.
Yeah, I have too. And I don't want to be too blinded by my own experiences where he was very effective every single time. Like there are going to be times where what I always like to look for the floor on the planeswalker. Like treat it like a sorcery for the minus ability.
Yeah,
right?
There you go.
And if you ask yourself, all right, 2 red green for basically look at the top 4, find 1 or 2 creatures, and I always like and gain some life. And that life gain is about the fact that then we're presuming the floor here is that we've had to play Domri out undefended, and the opponent can basically attack him down to the next turn. And so you basically get the minus effect plus whatever life you saved by having your opponent attack Domri instead of you. And that's the floor, though, and that's a pretty solid floor.
Yeah, it really is. And
it's not amazing, but it's a very solid floor.
No, and there's also just pay 4 mana, 6 loyalty. Like you play it plus it say go, and like that's really tough to kill. And then if you are on the beatdown plan, it is a nightmare because you plus it. You use that mana to give one of your creatures that didn't have Riot, or one that had Riot another instance of Riot, and then you start bashing them, and your opponent's like, well, crap. I've got a 7 loyalty planeswalker that I have to deal with at some point here. I can't just let it go. And they can't win the race anymore.
Yeah, because they can't let you get to 8.
No, because then it does end the game. I mean, that is not like the literal right now the game ends, but the game's over. You're getting a 4/4 on every end step. It's like 4/4. your turn, go, 4/4. You know, it's like by the time it's your turn again, you have 2 4/4s with trample that can attack right away.
Yeah, so when the floor is as solid as Domri is and the ceiling is just runs away with the game, it makes me want to put it in the A range.
Yeah, I'll give it an A. Domri Chaosbringer gets an A. Next is Dovan Grand Arbiter, another Planeswalker, 1 blue-white, so only 3 mana. And these are usually pretty tempered, given that they're only 3 mana. Is a 3 loyalty Planeswalker with +1 until end of turn. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a loyalty counter on Dovan. Now, it doesn't count the damage, but it just counts instances of creatures dealing damage. But still, if you attack with 2 things, he's at 4 from the +1, and then an additional 2. He's already at 6. It's pretty good. And then Dovan has a -1 ability of you get a 1/1 Thopter. That's a colorless artifact creature with a token with flying, and you gain a life. So that's already pretty good too. And then it has -7, so here's your ultimate. Look at the top 10 cards of your library, put 3 of them into your hand, and the rest in the bottom, in a random order. Which is also pretty good for a 3-mana Planeswalker. Sure. I think this card's really good. It gets loyalty huge. The Thopters are very relevant creatures. You minus it, and you just start flooding the board with these little Thopters, and the card's just excellent. I just think Dovan's just great.
You have a couple of modes there. Like I like a Planeswalker at this rate where I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing when I play it.
Yes, that's exciting.
Is it +1? Is it -1? It's going to be dependent on the situation.
Yeah, I like Dovan a lot. I think Dovan it does creep into the A range. I think Dovan Grand Arbiter is probably an A-. This card affects the game in a meaningful way, and it's on turn 3.
Yeah, I'm with you on A- just because I would, if you give me my choice of Planeswalkers here, I'm still going to take Domri.
Sure.
But Dovan is a fine add.
Yeah. I mean, the play pattern is play Dovan plus it, attack with a couple of things, and then start minusing.
Yeah.
It's really strong.
Yeah, 1/1 token factory is
plus the life really matters. Mm-hmm. Next is called Emergency Powers. This one's not quite as good as Dovan. It's 5 white-blue for an instant. It's mythic. It says, each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, then draws 7 cards. You exile Emergency Powers. It has addendum. If you cast a spell during your main phase, you may put a permanent card with converted mana cost 7 or less from your hand onto the battlefield. I don't like this card. I want to like this card. It has a somewhat free feel to it, but it is not.
Yeah, I got this. This was my Lucky Me pre-release promo, buddy. And let me tell you, it's in mint condition.
Yes, it's still in the little plastic. Yeah, I got the same thing. Look, the downside here is so huge. The upside's nice because you can emergency powers on your turn and then play something big, hopefully, and you actually can break that synergy. On traditional draw 7s, you play them, and then your opponent gets to be the first one to empty their hand out. And in limited, that might not be the most important thing because usually both players can end up emptying their hand by the time it matters. Emergency powers carries this extreme weight with it that you're the one who has it in your hand the whole game. You're the one that has to mulligan when it's there, or has effectively mulligan because it's a 7-drop and you might not get there. And that is too steep of a price to pay. So I think Emergency Powers is just bad. I would give it like a D-. Like I'm going to leave some room for something I haven't thought of. Don't play it. You just like F?
Yeah, I mean, you can give it a D- because it's actually fun to play. Like there's actively bad cards that are just like dismal to play. This one is going to do some stuff, but you're spinning a wheel. You're spinning the slot machine on this. You don't.
It also doesn't synergize with the deck because you're trying to draw a bunch of cards.
I'm just I'm out.
Okay, fine. F on Emergency Powers. You got me, Rye. All right, this next card's not getting an F. My God.
What's the opposite?
I never want to see it again. Ethereal Absolution. I mentioned it earlier. This might be the best card in the set. It is 4 white, black for an enchantment. It says creatures you control get +1/+1. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1, meaning that basically none of your creatures or they always win combat. And then it has an activated ability of 2 white-black. You exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. You can exile anything, but if it's a creature, you get a 1/1. I'm going to put 1/1 in air quotes because it's actually a 2/2 white and black spirit token with flying. This card is unreal. It is a complete house.
It's insane. It's crazy to put creatures. Anybody who's played with Elesh Norn knows what happens to a board where you plus your side and minus their side. I mean, this isn't as Elesh Norn is even more powerful in that way, but this is not a creature. Like you can't really kill this with typical main deck tools, and It's I think it's an A+.
Me too. I think Ethereal Absolution is an A+. I mean, the only decks that can beat it are Simic and Gruel, because they can actually make cards that are 5/5s and 6/6s that could still trump your cards. But even then, they often don't.
It's funny you mention that, because I picked Azureus at the pre-release, and I had an Ethereal Absolution that I splashed, and I had like 3 Orzhov Gates. It was great. I saw it once all weekend in my hand, and I cast it and lost to the Biomancer's Familiar.
There you go. There you go.
Sharktopus,
Shark to crab,
Shark to crab, Shark to crab, eel.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well, Ethereal Absolution gets an A+. Card is unbelievable. Next is Gruel Spellbreaker. It is 1 green red for a 3/3 with Riot. So I'm in already. That is a 3 mana 4/4 or a 3 mana 3/3 haste. So very, very good. It also has Trample. So 3 mana 4/4 Trample is insane on the vanilla test. That's one of the better ones you're going to find.
If you're playing that on curve on the play, they are in a world of hurt.
Right. I mean, you're already pushing up into the BB plus range just on that. And then it does have relevant text. It says, as long as it's your turn, you and Gruel Spellbreaker have hexproof. In limited, this was put in apparently for Settle the Wreckage or something in standard. But for us, it's like relevant, but not super relevant, right? I mean, it doesn't give your other creatures hexproof. It gives you hexproof. What are the things that I'm trying to target you with on your turn in this format? I don't even know. I would like to be able to kill your Spellbreaker in combat, but I can just do it on my turn if I have the answer. So that stuff to me isn't super important. But the first part is really, really important, and it's basically a 4/4 trample for 3. I like B+ for Gruel Spellbreaker because of trample. It is actually relevant on this card, and that thing is just an absolute house.
I'm with you on B+. Also, just that on curve, it's so amazing on curve. If you draw that late, it's going to be whatever. But on 3, on the draw or on the play is just
bigger than
devastating.
everything. Yeah,
bigger than everything.
Gruel Spellbreaker B+. Ooh, I love this next card. I got it in the pre-release that I played with Loading Ready Run. Hydroid Krasis, I splashed it. It is X green blue for a 0/0 flying trample. And as you might imagine, it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So you can have a 3/3 flying trample for 5 mana.
Give me one more.
There you go, 6 mana.
I want a 4/4 for 6.
You do in this card because it says when you cast this spell, you gain half X life and draw half X cards rounded down each time. So if I do cast it for 6, as you just mentioned, I will draw 2 cards and gain 2 life and have a 4/4 flying trample for 6 mana. That is absurd. If you do it in even increments, then you just take it in half and it's easy. If you do it in odd, then you round it down so you don't actually get it. But you can totally do it for 7, draw 3, gain 3, and still get a 7/7 flyer. You don't round the counter down. This card has been absolutely fantastic. Every time I've played it or played against it, it's been a complete beating. It's a 3-for-1. It's a 4-for-1 sometimes, and it is super relevant. You're not getting something, some creature that's like a throwaway. Oh, you get a big defender. No, this is a huge flying attacking creature that is a major problem for your opponent. So I love Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, this is just windmill slam, first pick, run around, do a victory lap in your living room type pick. I don't know if it's A+.
It's either A or A+. I would probably just give it an A.
Yeah.
Just say it's an A.
I'm going to just say A+.
Sure. Okay. A+ for Hydroid Krasis. I mean, it's also just sweet.
It's such value. What's
you do gain life. It probably is an A+.
It's a 3-for-1 if you do it right. And a good one.
Yeah. It's incredible. So A+ for Hydroid Krasis, in love. Next is Judith, the Scourge Diva. 1 black-red for a 2/2 legendary human shaman at rare. Other creatures you control get +1/+0, and whenever a non-token creature you control dies, she does 1 damage to any target. I've actually come down on this one a little, Rye. I have played against it multiple times now, and it is very strong. It is still getting a B+ from me. Maybe a B+. But I think I had it, B+, A- before, and now I have it more like B.
Sure.
But Judith is very powerful. She really is. She allows you these insane combat steps. She pumps up your whole team. She tends to sit back and not get into combat herself. So her power and toughness aren't super relevant in most situations.
Kind of anthem-y.
She's anthem-y. That's right. She's like an anthem with upside that you can kill easily. I like it. I would say B to B plus for Judith the Scourge Diva, but I have also found situations where the risk of ruin with this card is huge. For example, you've got your opponent down to relatively low life in your Rakdos deck, and you have Judith out, and you go, you know what, I've got 4 creatures there, you're at 4, I attack with all of them. If they kill or bounce Judith, you're eating all those creatures or making profitable trades, and they're in a world of hurt. And she constantly kind of puts you in those weird situations. So I think the way that you want to use her is as an anthem, but also to leverage your creatures. Attack, block, use the ping to finish off another creature or finish off the creature that was there, rather than trying to set her up as some late game win con.
Blocking is just such a nightmare when you're staring at Judith and you don't have the bounce. It's just like, wait, okay, so am I dead? No, my stuff is all dead. Oh, no, both our stuff. Yes. It's just like...
So I do like the card a lot, but like I said, I had her really high before for a 3-drop. I think B plus is fine for Judith. She might be a B. Mm-hmm. So where are you?
I'm going to go B plus.
Okay.
I still think maybe if it's B, it's because Rakdos is a B. You know what I mean? Relative to the other guilds.
Sure. I mean, good with tokens. Like, it's just not really a thing that Rakdos does. But
yeah,
the tokens don't trigger her when they die, but they do get pumped.
And it's easy to feel like, oh, Afterlife is an Orzhov thing, but black cards have Afterlife, right? So you can absolutely also just keep repeating the death and getting extra pings, and the tokens are 2/1 flyers instead of, so there's a lot of good stuff going on here, but a pretty fragile package too.
Yep. So B plus for Judith the Scourge Diva. Next is another Planeswalker, though this one's not very good. Kaya Orzhov Usurper is 1 black white. So 3 mana Planeswalker is already something I'm really excited about. But 3 loyalty plus 1 exile, up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. You gain 2 life if at least one was a creature card exiled this way. Not something that happens on turn 3 very often in limited.
No, it's almost like +1, increase your loyalty.
Yes. -1. And you think, okay, well, what's the -1, right? -1, exile target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. Look, it's not that there's 0 targets. There's Footlight Fiends and, Terramanders and stuff. But the truth is that 1-drops don't see that much play in limited, so you have to kind of get lucky to hit one. And if you don't, this ability does nothing. So that's pretty bad. And then the ultimate is kind of weird. -5, she does damage to target player equal to the number of cards that player owns in exile, and you gain that much life. So you have to have been exiling things with her, since cards don't normally make their way to exile, and that's not that great either. So I am really down on Kaya Orzhov Usurper. I don't think she's good at all.
Yeah, when are we playing her and why?
Like, against a control deck, right, the game's gone long. You play her, you exile 2 cards from the graveyard. You do it again. Now she's at 6 loyalty. Then you -5, and you get to hit them for 6 or whatever.
Okay.
And then you start doing it again, right? If they can't pressure her, it could do it. But the problem is you just run out of cards. Like, getting cards exiled is hard because you have to get them in the graveyard first.
Right. If you're heavy removal...
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm off of Kaya, but I think that maybe there's some sideboard implication. But otherwise, I think she's unplayable. Like, I just think she's like a D-.
Yeah, let's give. We might just go, or like a sideboard, like
sideboard C,
sideboard control. I don't even think it's. I think it's like a sideboard D. Like if you have, it's like, oh no, I'm up against a control deck, and I'm a control deck, and I don't really have inevitability, but I think this will be inevitability in this particular matchup. And I'm desperate. Like, that's when I see playing.
All right,
so
we've talked too much about Kaya because she is really not what you hope for from a Planeswalker.
No.
Maybe a cool design space to go with. But how about her Wrath? This is a little better. Kaya's Wrath is white, black, black. Ouch.
Kaya's pissed that we didn't like her.
Yeah, she is. Like... And so what she's decided to do is destroy all creatures. You gain life equal to the number of creatures you controlled that were destroyed this way, obviously at sorcery speed if you haven't read it. That's a rare. I'm a fan. I like it. It works well with the Orzhov mechanic as well. You're going to have some flyers and they're not. It's also just very powerful. The one catch is the mana cost. It is very tough to cast.
Yeah. Although, you're going to run this happily in any Orzhov deck, and it's really nice sweeper. It's not exactly a Plague Wind, which is a classic card that just destroys your opponent's creatures, but it can feel like it if you've got enough Afterlife where it's like, yeah, I destroyed all creatures, but check out these 4 flyers I've got.
Yeah.
Sure. That's pretty sweet.
I like it. I mean, I think Kaya's Wrath is probably in the B+ to A- range. I'll go A- on Kaya's Wrath.
Yeah, it's not... it's a unique type of ability. You don't get many sweepers. There's some weird ones at uncommon, but this is unconditional, basically. Unconditional sweeper.
Yeah.
And I'm down for A- on that.
Yep. Next is Lavinia, Azureus, Renegade. We can kind of go quickly through this one. It's blue-white for a 2/2 legendary human soldier. And she's got 2 static abilities. The first one is each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls, which is effectively meaningless in Limited. And the other one is whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell, which is effectively meaningless and limited.
So we have a 2/2 for 2 that's difficult to cast.
Yeah, she's a C-.
Yeah, I'd even say D+.
Sure,
like,
D. She's actually just a D.
Yeah,
right?
That mana cost is
it's way too
very oppressive.
It's her D for Lavinia, not for us. It looks like it's getting a decent amount of play in Vintage, though, which is kind of cool. I saw that on VSL this week. Next is Nikia of the Old Ways. Boy, I've talked a lot about this card. 3 red-green for a 5/5 legendary Centaur Druid. You can't cast non-creature spells. If your opponent plays this card, I guarantee they will try to cast a non-creature spell at some point during the course of the game. I've seen it 3 times, and this format's been out for a week. Don't let them. And then it says, but here's the catch. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. So it doubles your lands.
Mana doubler, but at the cost of your ability to do anything but creatures.
So this is what I did. I laid this out to try to conceptualize it for you, and you and I were chatting about it. So here's how I see it, okay? You start off your hand with 7 cards in it, and Nikia is one of them. By the time you've cast Nikia, and it's the next turn after that, so that you actually have the mana available to use all the doubled mana, it's turn 6, let's say at the earliest, right? So that's 7 cards in your opening hand plus 6 drawn, so that's 13 total. 5 of them are lands, so that brings you down to 8. 1 of them's Nikia, so that brings you down to 7 cards already, right? Now, on the next turn, how many of those are going to be creatures? I don't know.
Yeah, how did I build my deck?
Half, so maybe 3, 4, something like that, right? And if you look at it that way, you have to be able to dump 2 of those creatures probably, or at least 1 big one on the next turn to really make Nikia look good. Because I'll tell you what, a 5-mana 5/5 is a good creature, not a great creature. We have that at common in this set that's actually easier to cast and with no drawback. In fact, with a bonus because it has Riot. So Nikia the Old Ways to me is a little more narrow than she looks. I would build towards her pretty aggressively if I put her in my deck to the tune of 17, 18 creatures in my deck. I really want to be able to do this. And the other thing that I would pay attention to are mana sinks.
Yes. And adapt, the green adapt is a good thing you can do with it.
Anything repeatable.
You can activate abilities. You spend all the mana you want on things on the battlefield. You just can't cast non-creatures from hand. So, but it ultimately acts to me like the net. So it's this 5/5 for 5. And on the one hand, it has an upside if you are creature heavy and mana sink heavy and all that. But it's got a significant downside as well. And I think that downside is really significant, not only because of how it impedes what you can do, but how it telegraphs to your opponent what you are unable
Seriously,
to do.
I kept forgetting that they couldn't. And I'm just like, this is so much easier to play Magic.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what's in your hand, but I kind of don't care.
I don't care. It's
like you're not going to affect me with it right now.
Yeah, I think that Nikia leans on the fact that she's a 5/5.
Yeah.
And needs to... Basically, I think the ideal curve is this. You curve into Nikia. You play the 2 creatures you had left in your hand for full value. You attack with Nikia and she trades off with something.
Yeah. You just trade her off.
You want to get in while the getting's good and then just trade her off at some point.
And if you're facing arrest type effects, enchantment based removal that leaves her on the battlefield, you may want to just side her out for games 2 and 3.
Yeah. I am not super high on this card. I think that the power level's there, and if you build around her, she can give you some benefits. But I'm not. I actually have Nikia at like C+.
I was going to put her exactly at C+, but with this wild, like, either you're building around her in a really effective way. She's going to play pretty wildly different.
She is an A sometimes.
She's an A sometimes, and she'll just wreck your life sometimes. Yep. But I think the net is a C+.
Prime Speaker Vanifar is next. This card's gotten a lot of play for constructed. Not so great in limited, maybe. I don't actually know. I haven't played with it yet. 2 green-blue for a 2/4 legendary elf ooze wizard. Ooh, she's an ooze. She gets counters from the legend.
That is funny. She doesn't look very oozy.
No, she really doesn't. Tap. Sacrifice another creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost and put that card onto the battlefield. Then you shuffle your library. You can only do this at sorcery speed. Is this good?
No, it's fair. You really...
Like, you're killing a creature to get a slightly better creature?
Yeah, this is more of a constructed thing. This is a hearkening back to a card from actually New Phyrexia that ended up being banned in Modern, and it's fun. Like, it's fun to build a step. You know, that you're going to step from this to this to this to this to this, and it gets better and better every time, and there's an ETB every time, and that's what makes it function in constructed, and we just don't have that. Yeah,
but at the same time, I'm always playing Prime Speaker Vanifar, right? Like, she's a 2/4 for 4, which isn't great.
Yeah, if we vanilla test it.
With big upside. I mean, you're sacrificing a creature, but you are upgrading that creature. Like, you didn't lose anything in the transaction.
True.
And you could get up to your best creature, you know, or whatever.
So, are you playing a 2/4 for 4?
I think with the upside I would. I don't think without it.
No. Okay. And just because I'm trying to figure out what, you know, how much that upside is really worth. So just the other thing, you know, you want to make sure you try to fill the gaps in the chain so you can't keep going up. Although in this case, you know, it's not the end of the world if you, it's like I missed a gap there, but it's okay. I drew a creature and now I'm going to keep it going that way.
Totally. And you know what? Like, think about it. Like, here's a couple of examples, right? It's later in the game. And you're like, oh, I drew my 2-drop. Play it. Sack it. It turns into a 3-drop. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty good. Another situation that comes up a lot is attack you with my 4-drop. They're like, take it. And you go, cool. Sacrifice it. Get a 5. It's untapped. Like, I can now block you.
I was thinking about that. It's kind of some vigilance stuff going on there.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just do it forever, but if you have somewhere to go with it, it's good. And then also, let's not forget that you get incidental value too. Like, if your opponent plays Law Mage's Binding, you're like, okay, fine, just sacrifice that. And they kind of have to bind this, really.
And it does search for your bombs.
Yeah.
You know,
so I kind of like it.
I guess I would say also, like, make sure you have, like, whatever your bomb is, make sure you have some stuff under the bomb so that if you draw your under bomb, you effectively can even get it that turn because Prime Speaker's already out.
Yep.
So you cast your 1 less than bomb and tapper, and boom, you've got your bomb, right?
Yeah. I like it. I think Prime Speaker Vanifar is good. It's just not broken like you can make it in constructed. That's the gap we have to fill. Where do we put it? B+. I want to say B+ for Prime Speaker Vanifar. I just think there's enough going on.
You talked me way up, actually. Mm-hmm. I was going to maybe even be in the C range, but you're not, I think it might be a little clunky, so I'm going to keep it at B. Okay. But you have brought me up on it.
And by the way, I do think the 2/4 stats are good for this, right? For what we're trying to do here. Mm-hmm. All right. Next is Rakdos the Showstopper. This is 4 black red for a 6/6 flying trample. Yeah, it's a legendary creature demon. This is sort of the big bag demon of this set. So this thing is literally a 6/6 Flampler for 6, and when it enters a battlefield, which is already great, by the way.
Yep, we're already in.
When it enters a battlefield, you flip a coin. For each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp, destroy that creature whose coin... that's cool that it says whose coin comes up tails.
Huh. Seems...
So you flip a coin on effectively every creature, even though not literally, but effectively every creature, to see which ones die and which ones don't. But no matter what, you're the one who's left with Rakdos the Showstopper at the end of it. So that's a pretty big weighting of the coin, if you will, back in the direction of, just go ahead and run it out there. And of course, you get to free roll all your opponent's stuff, but you can lose your own too, which is definitely annoying.
Yeah, I'm assuming Rakdos has a fair number of demons, devils, or imps, but demons tend to be a rare level type creatures.
Imps, I don't think there's one, and then there's like a couple of devils. You know, there's the Rafter Demon or whatever. Right. Or not Devil's Demons, I mean.
So, that's...
This card's great, by the way. I've played it, and yes, it does have this sort of randomness to it that is not particularly satisfying for like hardcore spikes like us. Mm-hmm. But you can do the math, right? If they have 3 creatures and you have 2, you're totally fine. And again, it's so powerful as a 6/6 flying trampler that you don't really care. You're just like, sure, wipe some stuff away. I have this massive beater that just finishes the game so quickly and is a great blocker and all that. So I love Rakdos the Showstopper. I'd give him an A. I really do just think this card's just amazing. And, you know, if you flip well, you can also just completely crush your opponent.
All right. Maybe it's an A. I was going to say A- just because of the chance of those flips just really reckoning you. But you do get a 6/6 flying flampler left behind, so that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, and also, like, you're the one who's most likely to have a demon, devil, or imp.
Yeah.
You know, so
anyway, keep creature types in mind, and maybe it'll sway a few picks here and there one direction or another.
There you go. So, Rakdos the Showstopper, A. Next is, well, it's another A. It's Ravager Worm. It's 3 red, green for a 4/5 worm, mythic rare. But get this, it has Riot. So you can either be a 4/5 haste or a 5/6 creature, and when it enters a battlefield, you choose up to 1. Ravager Worm fights target creature you don't control. So if you riot with the +1/+1, it's a 5/6 that fights another creature.
I will choose that one, please. Yes. Thank you.
And the other one is much less common. It'd probably be only 1 or 2% of the time. Destroy target land with an activated ability that isn't a mana ability. I don't actually know if there's one in the set. It is super not that relevant. You're going to basically play this as either a 4/5 haste that kills a creature or a bigger, a 5/6 that kills a creature. And that is just a solid 2-for-1 all the way around for 6 mana. And I like A for Ravager Worm.
Yeah, 2-for-1s that are this consistent and this powerful. And I mean, you could have Trample. Maybe that would make me a little extra happy, but I'm not going to complain. We'll give this an A.
Yeah, solid 2-for-1. Seraph of the Scales is a mythic. It's a 2 white green. For an angel, it's a 4/3 with flying, and it has 2 activated abilities and a static ability. Static is Afterlife 2. The activated abilities are white, it gets Vigilance until end of turn, or black, it gains Death Touch until end of turn. So it's kind of interesting because, this is really a 4/3 flyer with Afterlife 2. Mm-hmm. The abilities are fine. Like, you'll take them, why not? But they don't really make the card. Like, they're not the thing that you're like, oh, wow, I get to give it Vigilance. That's so great. This card's actually not that great of a blocker as a 4/3. It is great as a blocker as a Vigilance creature a Death Touch creature with Afterlife 2. So it does get the job done on the blocks. But, a 3 toughness blocker's not, do you even want to block their 2/2 with it? Not really. This card's like much better than that.
Yeah, it's going to be you'll feel at risk when you do that.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like a joke, but this card's actually fairly balanced, right? Because it kind of just does everything, right? It attacks well, it blocks well. If it dies, you're fine. It's evasive. This card is not one of those play the card, you win the game, but it will find the solution that you need in any case here.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of it. I think it's really strong. I think it's an A-. I actually don't think it's like quite an A, but it's probably close.
I was going to say A-. I think it's
a great card.
Yeah, it's a great card. It's just it's a little compare it to like the 4/4 flyers for 4 that we gave A's to. That point of toughness matters a lot. And they had some extra abilities that I think mattered more than these. So I like A-. You're not going to turn this down.
Yeah. If it's an A, whatever. Simic Ascendancy is next. Here's the mana sink that I want with Nikia if I'm on a splash. It's blue-green for an enchantment at rare. It has an activated ability, and this is really the most important part. It's 1 blue-green, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. So that's instant speed available. If you can get up to 6 mana, or even just the 3, it just makes combat a complete nightmare for your opponents. It is a little bit of a non-bow with adapt, because if you do this, then when you adapt, it doesn't do anything. Mm-hmm. But whatever, this is probably just better if you've already used it, and you can put it on any creature. And then it has more text. Whenever you put 1 or more +1/+1 counters, whatever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put onto a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. It's actually an alternate win condition, but in my experience in Limited, you win the game before that if you start throwing counters from it. So
put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on things and you win the game.
This card's really powerful, though. It is mana intensive, so it's not just like this unbelievable bomb. But my God, if you have any time whatsoever, this thing just takes over the game. Your opponents just can't win combat.
Yeah, it does have a threat of activation, interestingly, on enchantment on the board instead of on the creatures themselves. But you can get some things through, especially at 6 mana, when you can threaten. It's like, you can't really block this, man, because if you do, I'm going to spend some mana and eat your creature. And so so great threat of activation here, and I love it.
I love it too. Great mana sink. I do want as many mana producers as I can get to run Simic Ascendancy and be happy. I have it at B. It is really mana intensive. It is slow. This is not the kind of card that just dominates the board and kills your opponent right away. If you choose to use it to put the +1/+1 counters on a bunch of your creatures, that can be very costly. If the creature dies, you can waste a whole turn. You'd usually prefer to still build out your board. So I have Simic Ascendancy at B, but it can win the game.
I'm curious if this was in a pack with Rhythm, the uncommon Gruel, because you gave that a B.
I gave that a B also.
So what would you take?
I would take the Rhythm.
Rhythm?
Yeah, just no mana.
Yeah.
It's just like you just you do the things that you were going to do anyway. They both take a card slot. They both don't do anything on their own. You're almost never winning again by the alternate win condition, so that's not relevant. So yeah, I like Rhythm better. But I like Simic Ascendancy a lot, especially if you have a lot of mana. It also just means you can't really flood out.
Right.
So what do you think for it?
I kind of liked it more, I was leaning B+, but maybe it's just too clunky to go
It
that
is a
high.
little clunky. That is the only downside.
It is a little clunky. Yeah. So yeah, I'm with you on B. That's
okay.
Fine.
Next is Teysa Karlov. Teysa is 2 white/black for a 2/4 legendary human advisor. And again, we don't really like 2/4s for 4, right? That isn't exciting. That's just kind of whatever. But when you're trying to block and kind of set up a longer game, it can be good. She says, and she has text that says, if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. It also says creature tokens you control have vigilance and lifelink. So look, the joke here, right, is that your afterlife triggers twice. That's the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it does do other things. It's not just that, but that's the idea behind Teysa.
And for that reason, I think I would give her a build-around grade.
Agreed. She is awful on her own.
Or just meh, right?
Yeah.
Like a 2/4 for 4 is like
again,
D+.
gold, this legendary. Yeah, it's just like, ugh. Yeah, exactly. So I like Teysa in almost any Orzhov deck. Like any reasonable Orzhov deck, I'm playing Teysa and I'm happy about it, and I give her a build around B.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's build around, I'm even going to go like B+. Sure. I just think, maybe I'll stick to B, because
you do have to have a lot of things. The setup cost is real.
The setup cost is very real.
You're not paying that much. I mean, she's still a creature that it blocks or whatever, so.
But man, those Afterlife 2s with her.
Ooh. Unbelievable. Like the board just fills up and you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Next is Theater of Horrors. This is 1 black/red for an enchantment at rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. During your turn, if opponent lost life this turn, you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors. They stay, by the way. It's not just the one that turn. And then it has an activated ability of 3 and a red. It does 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. I'll tell you what, when I read this card, I was kind of out. I was like, this is so slow, so clunky. It feels awkward in the Rakdos deck because it's just like, I'm curving out with creatures. I'm trying to do all this cool spectacle stuff. And then I'm like, Theater of Horrors, go. Like, it doesn't do anything until your turn. And then I played against it twice and I lost horrendously to it. And now I think it's really good.
Yeah, it just seems like the card flow is incredible. If you're building a typical Rakdos deck, you're going to be low to the ground, lots of aggressive, cheap stuff. It's like Light Up the Stage, but at a rare and ongoing level in that way.
Yeah. One of the key notes here as well is that it does say you may play cards exiled with Theater of Horrors, not cast. So you may play lands.
So that's a big deal.
And it's a big deal because what ends up happening is that as the game grinds further, you start activating Theater of Horrors to play the cards from Theater of Horrors. And at that point, you've won. Mm-hmm. So I actually like it a lot. I think Theater of Horrors is a B+. I still have a hard time getting it all the way to the A range, but seriously, Theater of Horrors is like really, really good. Mm-hmm. What grade do you have it at?
It's a tough one to grade because of its kind of complexity that way, but I think it does fit in with that deck really well, and I would take it at a B+ level.
Okay, yeah. So B+ for Theater of Horrors, super good card, way better than it looked when I first saw it. Next is Zegana, Utopian Speaker. Zegana is 2 green-blue for a 4/4 legendary merfolk wizard. So
a fine start.
Good, right? I mean, I'm in. Like, that's already a C+.
Sure.
B-, whatever. When Zegana enters the battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, draw a card. Nice.
Ding.
Right, and this is, of course, she's the guild leader for Simic, so you are often going to have another creature with +1/+1 counter on it. So now a cantripping 4/4 for 4, I'm in. And she says each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample, which is like pretty good, right? In this deck, it can be really strong. But here's the kicker: 4 green-blue to adapt 4 and make her into an 8/8 trampler.
That works.
Yeah. So all of these things together to me make Zegana fantastic. I have her at A-. I think she's a premium card. Specifically for Simic, but just a great card all around.
Yes. Beware of making all of this investment into your opponent's plan of removing her for much less than you spent to cast her and get her up to 8/8.
Right.
But the chance, that working is just nuts. And most Simic decks are going to get the card draw off of her unless you've had some bad luck on your draws that game.
You should try as well.
Yeah, you absolutely. Yeah, you should.
You should try to set that up. Getting that card's a big deal.
It's a big deal, and generally, you want to, put out your other threats to be removed before her anyway, especially because of what she can become at the right mana.
Yeah. So yeah, I like A- for Zegana, Utopian Speaker.
Yeah, that's about where she belongs.
All right, so we've got a cycle of split cards, and then a couple of artifacts, and like 1 land. There's basically 2 lands effectively because one of them's a cycle. So we are right down the stretch here. The first one is Bedeck Bedazzle, and Bedeck is the Bedeck Bedazzle is the Rakdos one. So Bedeck is a red black hybrid. So 2 mana of either any combination of red or black mana. It says target creature gets +3/-3 until end of turn at instant speed. Excellent.
Yep.
An instant speed removal spell is how this will play most of the time. You can finish off your opponent with it in the right situation, but generally speaking, it's going to be kill something with toughness 3 or less. And that is excellent already. Like, that's a B. Like, that to me is a B- or a B level removal spell. It has an extra text, but I actually don't play it this much. It's called Bedazzle. It's a 4 black-red for an instant. Destroy target non-basic land. Did I lose you already, Ray?
Yeah, mostly, but
it deals
you had
2
me
damage.
on the deck, so...
Yeah, I mean, with that part of it, yeah. Bedazzle deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. I have actually seen this cast, Bedazzle does that. You cast Bedeck 90%, 95%, 98%, like the vast majority
up there.
Yeah. So to me, this card is a B-. I do consider this premium level removal for Bedeck because it does kill things that cost more than it for very cheap and at instant speed.
Yeah, I would have, if the color costs were easier on Bedeck, it would be a B, but I think the red, black, that the color intensive nature of it brings it down to a B-.
I agree.
And Bedazzle doesn't really matter.
And Bedazzle doesn't really matter, but like in Rakdos, it's like colorless.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Excellent card. Next one is the Simic version. It's called Repudiate or Replicate. Repudiate says, and this one's kind of funny because this card is exactly the opposite. The first half sucks and the second half is awesome. Yeah. Repudiate is a Simic. So it's a green or blue or green. It's an instant that says counter target activated or triggered ability. Womp. I mean, not that this is like a 0. You will, if you're creative, find cases for it to be. So here's the thing that happens most of the time. You find a place where you can cast Repudiate and you go, I'm not going to do that because it's not worth it, right? And that's just very common.
I was going to say, the times you actually cast Repudiate are going to be awesome.
Yes.
Because it meant that the situation was so good, you declined to cast Replicate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's like normally you're not like Riot Trigger on the stack, sucker, Repudiated. Like that's not how this goes, generally speaking. No. Although, if that Riot creature was the hasty creature that they needed to kill you, do it.
Right, do it.
Now, the other side is the really exciting one. It's called Replicate. It's 1 green-blue for a sorcery. And I will note, by the way, first half's an instant, second half is a sorcery. Sometimes they do that.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. For 3 mana, copy your best creature. That is powerful stuff.
That is very good. It's obviously really more clones. Limiting than the clone effect, being able to get yourself out of a bad situation because you get to copy the bad situation is a very powerful effect of the clone card. So it's it's not nothing to lose that off of these copy your owns, and also it's a token. So it's extra fragile as well. So there's a lot of fragility and setup going on here. But it is in Simic. That's another thing that we should make a note of rules-wise. The way to think of copying is you get what's in the sleeve, they say.
Yes.
So and it's very important with Simic where you do not get the +1/+1 counters that you have adapted onto that Simic creature you're copying.
Totally.
Which is just a note to make. So it all adds up to me to be like a B-.
Yeah, it's a B-. Because it's an A when you're copying your biogenic ooze.
Yeah.
And it's a D when you copy your random 3 or 4 drop.
Or it's an F when your board is empty and your opponent's not doing anything to counter.
And you're repudiating, know. But thankfully, Simic is very creature-centric.
Right.
So you're very rarely going to have 0 targets for it. But obviously the dream... So I use biogenic ooze as an example because I did that. I did that on the stream.
Yes, awesome. That's going to make you feel pretty good about this card.
It made my opponent concede immediately. So
maybe it's a B. It's B-B range.
Yeah.
There's just some setup there.
It's just the first half being so...
Yeah. I'm barely looking at that. I'm just looking at Replicate and saying, what do I think of that?
Yeah, same. So B- for Replicate, and then there's also Repudiate tacked onto it. Next is Revival Revenge. So this is the Orzhov one. Revival is, again, 2 Orzhov hybrid. It's a sorcery. It says return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sorcery speed. Okay. That's a castable spell. That matters. It's not super powerful or rare.
Mana off if you can find a 3.
Yeah, there you go. Enters a battlefield effect. Another, what's it called? Another afterlife creature? Sure. Revenge is really interesting. It's 4 white-black for a sorcery. Double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life rounded up. Woody cast these like back to back and he was at like 80 or something like that. His opponent was down to like 5 or I guess 4. But yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, what do I make of Revenge? Is that even good?
I don't think it's good.
I don't either.
It's
funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's going to be situationally good, I suppose, but what if I told you it was gain 10 life, they lose 10 life? It's a big swing. Yeah, but you cut this card in half and just hand me Revenge and say, are you ever playing this? I think it's no. I think what happens with this is that Revival is enough reasonable value if you've got, reanimate dead, bring back dead creatures effects scale based on the quality of your creatures.
In your graveyard.
Yeah. And so, like, the other question is, when you're getting back a small creature later, is it going to matter? And sometimes it does. Sometimes you just need to cycle through. You're doing something else. You're casting your 2 from your hand, and you're getting back a 2, a 3 from the graveyard. Like
very powerful turn.
That can be a powerful sequence. And I think it's mostly about that. And then sometimes you're going to be like, oh, in this particular spot, if I Revenge right now, I set myself up for a pretty likely win over the next couple of turns. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I would never put that in my deck for that.
I agree. I mean, the nature of doubling and halving is so dependent on what the original number is.
Yeah.
So what do we want to give Revival Revenge?
Like
this is a
C-.
hard card to grade. Yeah, sure. C- for Revival revenge.
And
I like
again,
it.
And C- is like the revival part with a chance of revenge.
Exactly. The next one is the Gruel one. So this one actually is good on both sides, where the ones that we've seen so far have really been kind of lopsided. Thrash Threat. So Thrash is, again, 2 Gruel hybrid mana. At instant, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. So it punches, not fights.
Yeah, punches, big game.
At instant speed as well. So very strong, especially in Gruel where you tend to have big creatures. And if you don't, you can cast Threat, which is 2 red, green for a sorcery that gives you a 4/4 red and green beast creature token with trample. Nice.
Now we're talking.
That's some business.
Yeah.
Like those are 2. Like I would play either of those cards in my Gruel deck happily.
Right. Very happily.
I mean, it's almost a bummer that they're attached to.
Right. Like, I only get one of these.
Yeah. I mean, an instant speed removal spell that's conditional on you having a board. And if you don't, it gives you a board. Like, awesome, right? That is just
For me, it's just whether this gets into A territory. It's like a clear B plus at least because I'm so happy with the
does the versatility get it to A minus?
Right. And
I don't know the
maybe
answer.
not, because in each case it's still a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
It's just a flexible.
But that flexibility is so good.
Yeah. I'm not sure I can get to A minus on it.
I don't think I can either.
But I think it's a clear B plus.
B plus for Thrash Threat. Next is Warrant Warden. And you like ones that have 2 good halves, this is your card.
Yeah.
Warrant is 2 Azureus, so blue, white, blue, or white, instant. Put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. That is a 1-for-1.
Yeah.
That is not a bounce spell. That is calling a removal spell is probably not accurate either, but that does blank their next draw step effectively, so very strong. And then Warden is 3 white, blue for a sorcery. Create a 4/4 white and blue Sphinx creature token with flying and vigilance. It makes a Serra Angel for 5 mana, which is what Serra Angel costs.
Yeah, hard to cast, harder to cast, not particularly hard. It's but harder to cast Serra Angel that's fragile, right? But we had Serra at B when we were talking earlier. I think there's a knock because of the fragility that bounce just kills it, but then there's the plus of the warrant side that kind of puts that back to the B plus range for me again here.
Yeah, I want to get to A minus for this one because I feel like the threat, like both cards are better.
Yeah.
The 4/4 flying vigilance is better than a 4/4 trample, even if it costs an extra mana. It's just a better creature, and warrant is always castable. Like if you're behind, you're just like warrant, put that thing back and buy yourself a ton of time. Where Thrash deals with the thing permanently, but is still a 1-for-1, and you need the right setup of the board.
Right.
So I actually get to A minus for Warrant Warden. I think that this is just like removal plus really good threat, or removal or really good threat is just a really killer combo. And I'm going to go A minus on it.
All right, that's fair. I'm going to stick with B plus, but I see where you're coming from.
2 artifacts. One is called Glass of the Guild Pact. 2 mana for an artifact. It's rare. Multicolored creatures you control get +1/+1.
I mean, how many do you need, right? That's the question. And
10?
Yeah, I was talking to Wong about this, and it aimed low. I snapped 7, but then I retracted. I think that's a little lower than you want. But also keep in mind in this set, your afterlife tokens are gold. So
that's true.
If you're heavy gold, heavy afterlife, that's a real factor.
I think this is actually where this card lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, is in Orzhov.
Right.
There's also really good common...
Right, there's a lot of gold cards with Afterlife.
Yeah, but God, I still just feel like it's homeless. Like, okay, that's where it's the most powerful with tokens, specifically the gold 1/1 flying tokens that you mentioned. But even then, is it really worth a card? Like, how often do you end up with 4 of those? I usually end up with 1 or 2 at the most.
Yeah.
I don't like Glass of the Guild Pact. I mean, we saw, Charles tried to play it with his Rakdos deck, and it didn't work. And he had a bunch of Footlight Fiends and stuff like that. The note that he had on it that I think did make a lot of sense was that he really wanted it to be like he wanted it to be a 2/3 that was becoming a 3/4 rather than like a 3/2 that was becoming a 4/3. Like
make the butts bigger.
Yeah, like make it just harder to interact with and stuff. Because when you attack with a 3/2 or a 4/3, it trades for similar subset of creatures.
It does.
Where the other one, that isn't the truth. So I'm actually pretty low on Glass of the Guild Pact. It's clearly a build around. I don't have it very high. I feel like Orzhov doesn't win the game by playing a card like this and beating you. It just plays another, Afterlife creature instead of it. Like, if I showed you like a solid Orzhov deck and I said, okay, Ryan, I have one more card to fill out. It can either be Glass of the Guild Pact or it can be Oligarch, the 2/1 with Afterlife 1 and Vigilance. I would just assume you would just be like, I'm just going to take the Oligarch.
Yeah, I'm pretty conservative on that type of choice that way.
Yeah, I mean, this thing doesn't block. It doesn't attack. Like, it really needs to be doing a lot to make it worth it, I think.
Yeah, I think you need to be black-white with Afterlife and a lot of gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go build around like C. I just don't like this card.
It's the build around scale. It totally depends. If you can imagine some weird deck where you got 14 gold creatures, and then this is just a crusade.
Yeah.
Then you're just like,
yeah,
victory,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So that's the ceiling on it. It's not very likely.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, don't get too greedy with it.
Yep.
Really make sure you've got that strong volume of gold creatures to turn that on.
I agree. So Glass of the Guild Pact, build around something. C, D,
yeah,
A.
Build around count.
Yeah, but get it late. Don't pick it early. I would not pick this card to try to build around it. I just wouldn't do it. I don't think it's worth it. Last artifact is called Tome of the Guild Pact. It's 5 mana for an artifact at rare. It taps for 1 mana of any color. Whenever you cast a multicolored spell, draw a card. So this card, I have got a chance to play it, and it is a little bit of an engine. Like, it does its thing. The big problem with it is how slow it is. It's 5 mana. It does fix your mana, but in the Gates deck, you don't care anyway. Your mana is basically always fixed. And the mana itself isn't super important. So it does play a little bit more like 5 mana thing that lets you draw extra cards down the line.
Yeah.
I compare this to the creature enchantment that you said before, right?
That's exactly where I was going to go with this.
Right. So if I get 2 cards off of it, meh. If I get 3, okay. If I get 4, I probably win the game. How many gold cards do you need in your deck? A lot. I wouldn't like here. So here, to me, this sums up the card. Tome of the Guild Pact. Okay. I show you a multicolored deck with gates and all this stuff going on. And I say, should I play this Locket or Tome of the Guild Pact? And I think a lot of times the Locket's going to win because it comes down at a time when the mana is much, much more relevant, both in fixing and amount. Mm-hmm. And you do get cards back off the Locket after it's used up its role as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison point, and I think you're right that I'm more drawn to a Locket.
Yeah. Obviously, the upside on Tome is higher. You can draw 10 cards off of it.
But the likelihood that I execute the game plan of the card is much higher on Locket.
Yeah, I agree. So Tome of the Guild Pact to me is fun. It's pretty powerful. It does have an effect, but you need to build around it, and it's not like a bomb. Whatever. I'd probably put it on the build around scale because you're not just throwing it in any random deck. And it's like a C+. Build around C+ for Tome of the Guild Pact. We've actually only got 2 cards left because 5 of them are the Shocklands. Mm-hmm. So Blood Crypt, Breeding Pool, Stomping Ground, Hallowed Fountain, Godless Shrine are in the set. They're not particularly good.
They don't even pump my Gatebreaker Ram.
They don't. So in most scenarios, a gate would just be better. If you had a Stomping Ground or a Gruel Guild Gate in this set, you'd rather have the Gruel Guild Gate. So that doesn't speak super highly for these cards. If you get them late, you can put them in your deck. If you're playing on Arena, you might, but on Magic Online and in real life, you're not getting them late. Right. So whatever, they're D's, they're C minuses. Like
I don't think you see them too late on Arena.
Yeah, that's probably true now. Yeah, true. And that leaves our last card, which is Plaza of Harmony, a card I really like. It's a land. It's a rare. And it says it taps to add colorless mana, which isn't too exciting. But it also taps to add 1 mana of any type that a gate you control could produce. So if you're playing a lot of gates, or if you play it in a deck that has a lot of gates, it can tap for colored mana. And when it enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you gain 3 life. And it doesn't enter the battlefield tapped, and it is not a gate. It is just a land. So that's something to keep in mind, is that it just would be probably a little too powerful if it was a gate on its own as well. So it doesn't actually add to your gate count like, what's it called does? The 5-color gate?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it does.
It's also a plaza card, right? Is it?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Gateway Plaza. Yeah.
There you go.
And this is Plaza of Harmony. And yeah, so I like it in the Gates deck. I don't think I would play it outside of it. Like, this is a chance that it only adds colorless is just too bad. Because it only copies mana from Gates, not from your other lands.
And you're just never going to prioritize this. If you happen to get this late and you're in the Gate deck, you're sure?
It is good. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's basically, it's a 5-color-ish land in that deck. So, and the 3 life is super relevant, and it's untapped.
Right.
So
it's one of your 3 lands that enters untapped.
So, I don't know. Exactly. Build around. I don't really know how to categorize it, because there's many decks that just wouldn't want it at all. But in the Gates deck, I consider it like a C+. Like, it really does do a lot of things that you're actually excited about.
I would say just call it a build around C+.
Sure.
You're never going to play it if you're not heavy Gates. But it's kind of like the gold, the glass of the guild pack that we just looked at. The range, it's a build around, but exactly where on the grading scale that build around is going to depend heavily on how much you're supporting it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not a particularly exciting card, but and not a high pick in really any scenario. That's it. Those are all the rares in the set. There are some insane bombs. Is your number 1 still Ethereal Absolution?
I think that's what I would pick if I just got to start with a card.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's what I would do too. Yeah. Let's wrap it up, Rye. First things first, thank you to channelfireball.com for sponsoring the show. 30% bonus on trade-in. So if you're looking at a box of Ravnica Allegiance and you're like, ugh, I need a few bucks to get there, you can grab that pile of rares from like Guilds of Ravnica, put them in a shipper and send them on into Channel Fireball. They'll give you a 30% trade-in bonus that you can use on anything in the store. You can also just get cash if you'd like that. That is kind of the secret circle of life thing that, you really need to do if you're especially a strong limited player or a limited leaning player, is you want to, try to take advantage of those rares while they still have value, because you know how it goes. Standard rotates out and a lot of these cards are going to kind of fall off the map. So make sure you do that. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR. And Ryan is at Ryan Spain. There, you can find everything related to the podcast on lrcast.com. And Ryan, 2 things. First, I want to say thank you. You came in on short notice, and we're recording at like midnight. So, we really wanted to get the show out today. And you're going on a trip tomorrow. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Super appreciate you taking one for the team here. And the other thing is the stream.
Yeah.
So first, it's been going great. Yeah. Like, I watch it basically every day. And you really found your rhythm. You're killing it. You got some new graphics. Like, everything is really coming to come together. You have subs now?
Yep. I've been streaming since basically early December at Twitch TV/Going Optimal.
Which, by the way, will be in the show notes.
Yeah. So not Going Infinite. We're Going Optimal. Mm-hmm. And I stream every day at 10 a.m. Pacific. And I stream basically 3 to 5 hours, depending on how I'm feeling that day and how it's going. Mm-hmm. It's been really fun. We're building a great community there.
Yeah, you really do. Like, we announced it on the show. You picked up some of the old LR crowd. Now you've got kind of like the new people that have found you because of this kind of push for Arena. Mm-hmm. And, there's a real vibe in the chat.
Yeah, and we have a unique angle on it. We're in there. We're trying to go optimal. We are thinking about wildcards and how to grind gems. And I'm taking a very limited player approach and a very nuts and bolts economic strategy approach to how to maximize your time and money to get what you want out of Arena.
Yeah.
And we talk about that every day while we're crushing fools.
Yeah. And I mean,
sometimes
to me. Yeah, that does happen. But to me, we created a community with LR, right? Like that's the thing that I like the most about doing the show and all that stuff, is the group of people that are thinking like we are. And you've got another one going that is similar, but it's a little different, because it's like more Arena specific or whatever. And also it's, of course, feels different because it's like a live,
it's like live LR.
Thing.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Live LR while I have to play well.
Yes.
while talking. But so every morning is like a new episode of LR. I take questions. We talk about strategies for optimizing arena and have a great time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll put that link in the show notes so people can come check out your stream. You said 10 a.m.
10 a.m. Pacific.
Weekdays.
Yeah.
And twitch.tv/goingoptimal is where you can find that. Thanks again, Ryan, for coming on. That is going to do it for this episode of LR. We will be back next week. And I think Luis will be better by then. I really hope so. He's going to hopefully get some rest and get himself better. He was actually going to go to GP New Jersey, and he's going to make that a game time decision tomorrow morning on if he can go, because he has it all booked. Like, to miss it would be really,
Man,
painful.
Well, Luis, hang in there, buddy.
I know. I feel bad for him, man. He was super stoked to do this show and then to go to the GP, and now it's like he had to skip the show and he might not be able to go to the GP. So get well soon, Luis, and we'll see you soon, and we will see you next week.
All right, so I thought I would do a little name dropping with a story from a couple decades ago. My wife is well connected in the Seattle area music scene.
Very well.
Yeah, she's had a lot just from friends and stuff, and through those types of acquaintances early in our courting, she made friends with Eddie Vedder's she was friends with Eddie Vedder's personal assistant, and made friends with Eddie's wife at the time. And her name was Beth, and she and my wife hit it off reasonably well. And Beth was having a birthday party, and we got an invite.
Oh my God! Should we say who Eddie Vedder is? Like, I know it's like kind of offensive, but like
Eddie Vedder, if you don't know, is the lead singer of the rock group Pearl Jam and kind of all timer now. The surefire rock and roll Hall of Famers. And Seattle rock gods. Right.
Oh my God!
So,
yes.
local area rock gods. And I'm just super excited by this. And I find out that it's going to be it's a wig and karaoke themed party.
Oh my God. At Eddie Vedder's house?
Not at Eddie Vedder's house.
Oh.
At one of Eddie Vedder's party houses.
Oh my God.
So we go
That's insane.
We get the address. It's just some nondescript, normal looking house on Capitol Hill. And we go in there. It's just completely renovated, like not renovated, but set up to contain parties. And we go to the kitchen, and there's nothing in the kitchen except fifths of every cabinet is just full of liquor. The fridge is full of beer and everything. And so I'm nervous. I love singing. I love karaoke. So I'm excited about this already. But also, like, I'm going to be singing in front of Eddie frickin' Vedder tonight.
Oh my God, I would puke.
And so, I was feeling nervous. I had to have a lot of liquid courage before I was finally able to take the stage. But I did. I got in. I got up there, and my classic Marsh. You gotta go with your strengths when you're in that kind of situation. So yes, I chose the Gambler.
Your Gambler is sick, though.
Yeah, put a little country twinge on it and really get into it. And it turns out everybody knows and loves that song. But nobody wants to admit
I love and know that song.
Until it's anyway. So I get up there and I've had enough vodka to power me through, and I'm just belting it.
Do you let it rip?
I let it rip. It's great. And I get, and the crowd gets into it too, like there's that call and response stanza at the end of it. You got to know when to hold it. And like everybody is doing it, and there was a big round of applause, and I get off stage, and very shortly after, Eddie comes up to me, or like he talked to somebody else, like, who is that? He doesn't know me or anything.
Why is this guy here?
And so he got the lowdown, and I was hanging with Margaret, and he comes over and says, "Hey man, that was a great Gambler." I'm like, "Thank you, Eddie Vedder. I appreciate that. Thank you. This has been a great party." And so that was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much for having us over.
Thanks so much for having us over. And then, it got even better. So I had not seen Eddie sing yet.
Wow, that's got to be weird for a...
Right.
Yeah.
And so he finally, he sang, and he dedicated it to his wife at the time. They're no longer together, but, and he sang Nobody Does It Better, the old James Bond, one of the songs that opens the James Bond movie. And it was funny because he started, and he was almost singing it more like like his
Wait, like what?
No, just
like Kenny Rogers?
No, but just not rock starry. You know, like it was just almost like a schlub singing nicely and everything, but it didn't have that Eddie Vedder like gravel, rumble, you know. But then at some point in the middle of the song, he turns on the afterburners and is just like real like. He's belting it out and just like
that's
that. Baby, you're the best. Wow. You know, it was just like
was it awesome?
It was incredible. It was just like getting this personal performance from Eddie Vedder.
What a story!
Yeah, and so that was that's probably my. I've had a lot of run-ins and friendships with relatively famous people
some
in
very
my life.
famous rock stars.
It kind of from weird connections, they're not just Margaret or whatever. But anyway, that was like the biggest rock starry moment I ever had. Is just
you got to know when to hold them, buddy.
Ryan Spain, I party with Eddie Vedder. Yeah. How about you?
Not me.
No. You should try it sometime.
Oh God.